All right, what is going on, everybody? Hopefully everybody's enjoying their Tuesday. We got a busy show. We got a packed show today. Looking forward to hanging out with you for the next 3 hours. As I mentioned yesterday, John Schaefer will be out all week, so we'll be doing the show solo and looking forward to making it happen. So obviously live on the iHeartRadio app, live on 760 AM, and live on YouTube as well. You can search us, Schaefer and Sliwa Show. You can get the show. We got a packed show today. This has been kind of the beauty of this time of the year, especially out here in San Diego. We got a lot of stuff going on. The Padres are going to start a 3-game set against the Philadelphia Phillies coming up at 3:40. And this is the start of June. The month of June, I think, becomes so critical, and we'll get into some of the reasons of why it is. But just to kind of give everyone a quick outline here, Cory Seidman, that covers the Phillies for Philly.com, is going to join us at 3:15. Darnay Tripp's coming on NBC Sports San Diego. He's coming on at 4:30. And then Dillon Emery, who covers the San Antonio Spurs, coming on at 5 o'clock to talk a little bit about the NBA Finals. Okay, so critical month for the Padres. And I got so many different angles that we can go at here. But we talked a little bit about this yesterday. They go 13-15 in the month of May. I remember doing a show earlier in the month with John. I'm like, hey, if they go 500, I'm good with that. Obviously, Padres had their opportunities. I mean, you can look at the series against the Nationals. There's plenty of games, and every baseball team deals with this where you got great months, you got bad months. At least if you're the San Diego Padres, that's kind of what's happened so far through the first 2 months. Let me tell you guys why June is such a critical month for San Diego and so critical for the San Diego Padres. There are so many question marks of, are the Padres legit? Like, can they actually compete with some of these other teams in the NL? Do you know right now they're 4th in the NL standings? 4th. I mean, you would think just based off of their record, based off of the standings, you'd be like, hey, they're in just an unbelievable position. They're in a great spot. Maybe not unbelievable. That's a little bit aggressive. The problem, I think the biggest thing for me watching Padres baseball right now is the trajectory that where they're heading. A little bit later, I want to play something from Ken Rosenthal, who's talking about Tarik Skubal. And the conversation is like, hey, what teams do you think are going to go after Skubal? We're talking about one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. Is he available at the deadline? I know he gone through his injury, but he's working his way back, so the injury wasn't as bad as they thought. But I'm just going to use that as an example. And like I said, we'll get into that specific scenario a little bit later. Is the month of June not kind of paint the picture of how aggressive the San Diego Padres should be? Or maybe just, hey, this isn't the team to invest too much in? I know we basically have, you can call it, just under 2 months until the trade deadline when it comes to baseball. But this month of June, to see how awful the bats have been and the offense has been for the San Diego Padres, I think you start kind of reaching the point of the season. 2 months in, you start reaching the point of the season where you're trying to figure out now, what is the identity of the San Diego Padres? Has this just been a really bad 2-month stretch, or for some of these guys, a bad 30-day stretch, or for some of these guys, they've been bad all season offensively? Is this just a bad stretch? Is this just some bad luck? Are the numbers that we know, you look at guys like Manny Machado and you look at guys like Fernando Tatis, you look at, of course, Jackson Merrill, but you can go down the line. Xander Bogaerts, Ramon Laureano is, by the way, going on the 10-day IL. So something to keep in mind in regards to that. But just go down the list. All these players that have really just performed so abysmal offensively. Has this just been a bad couple of months or a bad 30 days, or is this who the San Diego Padres are? I want to play something for everybody. You know, yesterday, I just want to play one clip of this. Yesterday, we had Kevin Acee on, and I was asking Kevin the question of, hey, what determines whether the San Diego Padres and AJ Preller should be ultra aggressive before the deadline? And what do you think is the scenario where they pump the brakes and they slow things down? I want you to take a listen to this, because maybe it's not just the month of June is going to determine this. Obviously, there's a little bit longer of a window there. But doesn't it feel like this upcoming month for the Padres, they play 26 games? If you're 3-4 games below 500, something along those lines, is that kind of more of who you are and you're really not a contender in the NL? Or if you start churning things around and those bats finally start waking up and you're just a more respectable offense, your starting pitching is stepping up, your bullpen is the bullpen that it is, does that change the scenario for AJ Preller? Take a quick listen to Kevin Acee.
Yeah, I mean, if they were to say crater, he's not going to try to make them better for 2026. That's just not his way, and it shouldn't be anybody's way. So that's that one. That one's pretty easy. I don't know what that looks like exactly, but AJ has in the past identified, even if they were technically in it, he's identified, when it just doesn't feel like they are even close enough that a few pieces would turn them into a World Series contender. Because at that point, that's what it's about, right? So now, if they are still in it, and that means, I don't know, does that mean 500 balls? So they're 6 games over? It kind of depends on what the rest of the league does. But they start to hit a little bit better. They're looking like a better team. So I'm saying that how they're playing is as important almost as the record. Now, obviously, they have to be in contention. But, are they hitting? Does a starting pitcher make a difference? I'm talking top of the line. Does a starting pitcher that would help them in the postseason make a difference? Does a guy that every 5 days is essentially going to, as long as you score, it's going to get you a win. Does that guy make a difference? Or is that just like window dressing, right? Does a reliever, a back-end reliever, does that make a difference? Does one more bat make a difference? If not, what are you doing? That's going to be the question that is facing them.
That is such a, I think, interesting conversation, because I think what AC's kind of trying to represent there, and again, there's going to be trade rumors, and some of those rumors, the San Diego Padres, everybody just expects them to be in the mix based off of AJ Preller's aggressiveness. But there's a piece of me that's like, all right, well, does AJ Preller look at the month of June and say to himself, okay, if you guys start showing me that I should be trading incredibly important assets because we feel like we can be in the mix here, or does the month of June just kind of does it say what a lot of other people have been saying? A lot of these other experts have been saying that, I don't know about the San Diego Padres. The numbers just don't match up to be ultra aggressive, or they just don't match up as a true World Series contender, especially against some of these elite teams. Well, I'll tell you what they are going to have. They're going to have the Phillies coming up here today. They'll start a 3-game series, and that's a perfect example of a team and a squad. And I know Philadelphia, you just go look at the standings and it's not the same Philadelphia team. They started out obviously so awful. Phillies kind of got handled by the Dodgers in that 3-game set that they played against them. Now, what does handled mean? It means they lost 2 of 3, but they're above 500. They're much better than they were a little bit earlier. And these are the type of tests that you're going to get where we're going to find out a little bit more about the Padres. They had this test earlier, about a week ago or so, and they got swept by the Phillies. They got swept by the Phillies at home. And I think as we all kind of watch this team play, every time you kind of look for another storyline around the San Diego Padres, I think it's fair to say everything starts with the offense, and then you go from there. But I'll kind of continue to go back to this, and this will be a little bit more of my theme as we go through the show. The month of June seems like it's just going to be so critical for the Padres to show that, hey, we can be in contention here, invest in us. And unfortunately, in the month of May, that wasn't the case. And unfortunately, some of these other stats that kind of tie around the San Diego Padres hasn't exactly gone their way, but it's going to be their chance to obviously try to turn things around. I'll throw out the phone number. And like I said, coming up at 3:15, we're going to have a guest on here to talk about the Philadelphia Phillies and their side of things. And obviously this upcoming matchup against the Padres. Phone number is 877-767-4760. 877-767-4760. So obviously we could hit on a bunch of Padres topics, but the topic that I'd kind of start the show off with, which I do think will be part of the theme today is, what do the Padres have to do in June to kind of start showing here that you should be investing into them, that AJ Preller should be aggressive? Because I'm not, maybe I'm a little bit different. I'm a little more conservative in this regard. Now, I know AJ Preller is wildly aggressive, but I want to be shown that this team is worth spending money on. And the pickle that the Padres are in, it's like, is it going to get better in a year if you already got your main players in their contracts today and they're not making it happen? So we'll talk a little bit more about that as the show progresses. Coming up next, like I mentioned, I want to spend a little bit of time. Cory Seidman, who covers the Philadelphia Phillies for Philly.com. He's going to come up next, and he'll help us break down the series, Padres and the Phillies, a little bit later today. Stay right here. Thank you for tuning in. This is San Diego Sports 760. I'm Alan Sliwa. All right, welcome back to Schaefer and Sliwa Show. Padres getting ready to take on the Philadelphia Phillies. You know, I said this, and I know we probably say it all the time. It's a big matchup. This is a big series. It does feel like that way for the San Diego Padres, who've been reeling, lost 6 of their last 7. Obviously, we know how they finished the month of May. going 13-15. So, of course, this is always going to be the theme here. It's another big series. We'll see, obviously, what the San Diego Padres are able to do. I do want to welcome in our guest. Very nice to join us here. Cory Seidman, who covers the Philadelphia Phillies, all of Phillies sport on Philly.com. Cory, what's going on? Thank you for coming on here in San Diego.
Hey, no problem. I totally agree. This is a big series for both teams, obviously, because of the standings, the wild card positioning. But, I guess from a Padres perspective, they just got beat down and swept by the Phillies last week. And from a Phillies perspective, they got to show that they can beat good teams because the Padres are pretty much the only good team that the Phillies have beaten lately.
Well, that doesn't make me feel that much better. But I see the perspective. I see where you're coming from. Cory, I'll ask you this. I mean, Phillies, I think, are such a kind of an interesting team in the National League. I just assume, most of us in San Diego just always assume that the Phillies are going to be in the mix. We know how aggressive their ownership is. We know the type of talent that they have. And we know how they started the season. What was it, 9-19? Is that about right? Or 10 games below 500?
Yeah, it was.
What do you make of where they're sitting today? And will they become that dangerous team that everybody just assumes in the National League?
I still think that they're going to make the playoffs. Fangraphs has the Phillies at, I think, a 64% chance to make the playoffs as of today, which is kind of crazy given the 500 nature of their season to this point. They started out terribly, 9-19, and then pretty much flipped that by winning, going 20-9 once Don Mattingly took over. The big issue with the Phillies this year is pretty much what every observer and fan thought leading into the season, which is there just did not look like there was enough offense. You had Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, who are two elite hitters, but there's not a ton beyond that. Trey Turner's been a disappointing signing for $300 million. You thought you were going to get more out of him than you've gotten. And there's just not much protection in the lineup for Harper and Schwarber, especially from the right side. I know the Padres are going through similar issues where their key guys are not hitting. And both teams, Phillies and Padres, really have been carried by pitching. The Padres obviously have this elite bullpen. Phillies have gotten it done with starting pitching. In terms of will they be dangerous come October, I think that really depends on what they're able to accomplish by the trade deadline. They have not made big-time splashes for offensive pieces in season under Dave Dombrowski. The biggest mid-season acquisition they made was last year acquiring closer Joan Duran from the Twins. But this sure seems like a year where you have to push your chips into the middle, go get a Ketel Marte or, whoever the best available right-handed bat is on the trade market. And, Padres are a good example of a team that's super active every summer. Like Tarik Skubal, his name's bouncing around there a little bit too. And it seems like it's going to be the usual suspects after guys in that tier as well. Phillies, Padres, Dodgers. So it's going to be a fascinating summer.
It's interesting, Cory, when you put it that way, that when I hear you say that the Phillies need, go out there and try to get another bat, another right hand or something along those lines, in my head, I'm like, wait, have you seen the Padres offense? I mean, if the Phillies think they need offense, I could only imagine what the hell that means out here in San Diego. I just want to go back and, get your thoughts on it. It's a little bit unique, right? In baseball where you just finished a 3-game set with the Phillies, and then here you go, another 3-game set. What were some of your takeaways? And I'd love to get your perspective on, somebody out there in Philadelphia that watched the Padres for 3 straight games. What were some of your takeaways, some of the things that maybe surprised you on either side? It could be positive things or negative things.
Well, so I watch a ton of out-of-market baseball since I'm such a baseball junkie, fantasy baseball junkie. And so I watch a lot of every team. I love watching Padres broadcasts in particular for Don Orsillo and Mark Grant. I mean, it's probably the most fun announced team in all of Major League Baseball, in my opinion. Going into that series, my viewpoint on the Padres was, I don't understand how this team's 10-plus games over 500 or whatever they were at that point, because, you look up and down the lineup. Machado is still sub 200.
Nothing.
Tatis just hit his first homer, and Jackson Merrill, after that amazing start to his career, I'm sure it surprises people in every other city that Jackson Merrill isn't the superstar that he seemed like he was going to be by now. And going into that series, I had the sense that, this Padres team, it seems more pretender than contender just from afar. I'm curious what you guys think about that, because there are obviously still some huge names in the lineup, some really big pieces that you expect to turn it around. But it's kind of a similar issue with both teams where, You have high-priced guys who haven't really lived up to their billing so far this year. I would say Trey Turner, mostly with the Phillies, and then you guys with Machado and Tatis with the power drought that he's been on. And I just see it as, you can't win every game 2-1, 1-0. The Phillies right now, any series they go into where they have like Wheeler and Sanchez, which they're going to have for 2 out of 3 games in this series, they feel great about that. They were like, for example, when they went into Dodger Stadium last week, they were the betting favorite, the series opener, because Wheeler was on the mound. That's just like how the perception of what they can do on those days with their aces. But I don't know if either team's going to be able to accomplish all they need, because you look at the Dodgers and the Brewers and they just look like juggernauts. They have everything. They have offense, they have defense, they have pitching, they have prospects that you can trade for top talent. So they, to me, look like the class of the NL, but we see that every year. Anything can happen come October.
Cory, what's your take in Philadelphia when the conversation comes up? Obviously these labor negotiations, both sides kind of positioning themselves early on, got about maybe 5 months left under their current contract. What's the conversation in Philly? Because, I look at typically the Phillies are maybe top 5 or kind of hovering around there when it comes to highest payrolls. But at least in the near, over this last 10 years or so, Phillies obviously haven't cashed one in. Do people want to see a salary cap in Philadelphia? Like, is that something that even a team that's spending and even a team that's aggressive, do they want to see a little bit more control when it comes to spending, or would Philadelphia prefer that we keep this thing wide open?
Yeah, I find this so interesting because 5 years ago, 4 years ago, when it was 2022 and the CBA was being negotiated, I felt like you couldn't find a baseball fan in the country who would come out and say, yeah, we want a salary cap, because everybody was so pro-player and anti-owner. But now it just seems like the contracts have exploded to such a ridiculous degree that all throughout the country, fans think that their team has no chance to compete. Kansas City, St. Louis, Cincinnati, the Midwest. I've covered the Phillies for 15 years, and I was on the road for a bunch of years, and just traveling the country the last few years, talking to Uber drivers or people at bars or whatever. Most fans across the country think it's a totally lopsided system, and the Dodgers are the team they always highlight. And quite frankly, I don't even think the Dodgers are the biggest. I don't think the Dodgers even did the most insane thing of this era. I think the Mets did with $765 million for Juan Soto. It's almost like that has just totally blown everything out of proportion, and it's probably only going to get worse. Philly fans here, I would say it's almost like 60-40. The WIP, the main radio station, sports radio station, the other day put out a poll: should baseball have a salary cap? And I'm pretty sure the results were 59% yes, 41% no. And that's a mostly Philly crowd responding.
Can I ask you, Cory, what is can you help me with the argument for no? I'd be curious to hear. And I'm with you. Like the person I co-host the show with, John Schaefer, who's not here this week, but we've had this conversation, and he's actually originally from Philadelphia. I mean, just for what that's worth. But we've had this conversation, and he's kind of said, like, hey, I don't think that technically is the end all be all in baseball. What do you think that the strongest argument is for saying no, baseball doesn't need a salary cap?
Just that, free market and guys should be able to be paid what they're worth. And I would say that's the main argument for it. Mm-hmm. And there's also like what you see Ken Rosenthal saying, which is that he just doesn't think that that's the magic solution that everybody considers it. I don't know whether that's true or not. I think we'd have to see to really find out. The first proposal from the league to the players, it didn't make sense, obviously, on the surface when you look at the figures. Like the salary cap would have been probably too low, way too low from a player perspective. I did like the floor element of it. I mean,
brought it up. Sure.
Honestly, yeah, it's such a crazy topic, because I've always been of the mindset that why own a team unless you're going to spend? Like, why be the Pittsburgh Pirates who never spend? Like, why even own that team if you're going to be despised most of your tenure for not going out and spending? So I feel that, but then the other part of it is that, like, the money's not limitless. Like, even from a Phillies perspective, you mentioned that they're always like top 5, which is true. They've been like top 3, top 5 in payroll for the last 5 to 7 years. But even there, the revenue streams are not limitless. There is a cap to everything. And like the Phillies, for example, just brought in a couple new owners over the last 2 years to just infuse some more cash to be able to go out and continue to spend what it takes to be competitive in this market that really nobody saw coming, where the Dodgers and Mets have really just changed the entire conversation. So I just feel like we're at a point now where most baseball fans just think it's kind of like lunacy. And the league likes to, or the Players Association likes to point to the fact that, hey, the Brewers are good a lot and the Rays are good a lot. And that's true. But when's the last time one of those teams won the World Series? The Rays have never won. Some of these teams that you point to as like the beacons of small market success, they haven't been able to finish the job either. So I'm really fascinated to see what's going to play out here.
Yeah. And listen, that's obviously going to be a lot of I'm a little surprised it's already getting as much energy going towards that, even though we're in June, right, of the baseball season. You thought maybe this kind of comes more in the off season, but yeah, I'm with you. It's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. I mean, we'll see how things end up mapping out. But Cory, listen, man, we appreciate you coming on. We really need 2 of 3 here from San Diego, and we'd appreciate that. Look, you guys already swept, so let's see what we can do. But I appreciate your time and your insight. All right.
Yeah, anytime. My pleasure.
All right, that is Cory Seidman, Philly.com. Good stuff from him. Obviously the Philadelphia, it's so funny to hear somebody from Philadelphia talk about how they need more offense. I think Schwarber has more home runs than this entire Padres team combined for the last 2 years, and they need more offense. All right, got a couple things I want to get done when we come back. I want to continue this conversation in regards to the Padres and this upcoming matchup against the Phillies. Also, we're going to spend some time and I said this a little bit earlier, talked about the Ken Rosenthal and Tarik Skubal and the Padres and what Ken Rosenthal said in regards to that. So we'll do that in a little bit here as well. If you're out driving around San Diego, enjoying this beautiful city, and you want to talk some San Diego sports, 877-767-4760, 877-767-4760. We'll take some calls a little bit later as well. Stay right here. This is the Schaefer and Sliwa Show. I'm Alan Sliwa on San Diego Sports 760.
This report is sponsored by Unbound.org. Padres are in Philadelphia getting set for their series with the Phillies. They're about to get started here in about the next 5 to 10 minutes. It's going to be Randy Vasquez going for San Diego and Aaron Nola for the Phillies. Like I said, first pitch is set for 3:40. We got game 1 of the NBA Finals not till tomorrow night in San Antonio. That will tip after 5:30. Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or to drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
All right, America is turning 250 years old, and San Diego Sports 760 is celebrating with $250,000 in cash. Starting Monday, listen for your chance to win $2,500 so you could take the ultimate American getaway and visit the states, the cities, the landmarks, and national parks that make our country amazing. Win your share of $250,000. Just listen for the keyword, then enter it at sportssd.com. Your next chance to win is coming up after 5 p.m. on San Diego Sports 760. If you're hanging out on the show, greatly appreciate you guys doing so. Okay, we got a little bit of sound here that I want to play. Padres obviously getting ready to take on the Philadelphia Phillies, and Craig Stammen. Let's take a listen to Stammen here before the game, just talking about this upcoming series, of course, the offense and everything else. Take a listen to Craig Stammen.
Anytime someone gets to make their Major League debut, we all remember our Major League debut and how exciting that is and what baseball is all about.
Yeah. What was your perception of him getting a chance to spend time around him in spring training? See what he can do?
Yeah, great kid, a lot of good energy. You know, he definitely had a great spring training for us. Showed off his athleticism, his speed, his power, and then he went and proved it in AAA. So he's definitely earned his right to have a chance at the big leagues.
Yeah. Going on the IL, what can you tell us about that situation?
Yeah, just his hip's been bothering him for a little while, and he finally, admitted that it's, affecting some of the things that he's doing on the field. So we felt like it was smart to, take care of it right now, get him on the IL, and, really get him back, hopefully, in relatively short time.
You look at Manny's numbers as far as the batting average versus last year, obviously nowhere close, but when you look at the numbers like the number of home runs and the RBIs, he's actually has more this year than he did at the same time last year, despite batting average being 200 points higher. So, can we argue that Manny's still being productive? He can be more productive and have the higher batting average, but considering what's going on, he's still putting up some numbers that have been helpful.
Yeah, he has had some big hits for us, and usually those big hits have scored some runs. So you can remember 3 or 4 home runs that he's hit where we were down and we needed a 2-run homer, and he's hit a couple of them. So he just hasn't been able to consistently, lock in a bunch of hits a game like we're accustomed to Manny having. But I think, when he gets hot, like he usually does at some point, he goes on a nice little run that lasts a little longer than most other players' hot streaks.
It looks like Jackson maybe starting to find some things. Last few games have been really good for him, especially started against Sanchez with those 2 hits, it seemed like.
Yeah. He's definitely taken some better at-bats lately. I think the last game in Washington where he, gets a hit, lays down a bunt, then slaps one past the third baseman. That's what we remember about Jackson, how he can, get those opposite field hits and kind of play the game in a bunch of different ways with his speed and power. So, like where Jackson's trending right now.
Randy Vasquez, the first 5 or 6 outings, super solid. Last few, it's been a little bit more hit and miss. What do you think's been the difference? Is it a command thing? Is it a sequencing thing? The league's starting to see it more, or just you're not going to be your best all season long?
Yeah, that's probably the most of it for me. Is you're just not going to have 33 starts where you're the best you've ever been. So, he was probably due for a little bit of not as great starts, but even his last one against the Phillies, he was able to get through into the 6th inning after a kind of a tough start, and all the runs that he gave up were 2 outs. So, trying to get better with 2 outs, he has a really good outing there.
Do you know around when the hip started bothering him?
He said it's a hip that's bothered him back to 2021. So it just kind of goes in and out, and he felt like he felt it a little earlier in the season, but then it got better, and then it just got to the point where it's like, all right, I need to take care of this a little bit.
Would have been affecting you more lately.
Yeah, that's according to him. Yeah, that's what he said. It was hard to tell anything on the field. He's been playing hard, runs the baseline pretty hard every time, and but his at bat, he struggled a little bit to play a little bit. He said he's had a problem throwing. So, it's all the little things in baseball that go into the big thing, and they just need a little bit of breather.
Right, with Jace, what was the conversation like with him today, and both in terms of his role, what are you hoping to best utilize him? Do you see him as a platoon bat? Do you see him as someone where you want to give him a run playing every day? How does that look to you?
Yeah, we'll see. We're kind of just focused on today and letting him have his major league debut, and telling him it's just another baseball game with a few more fans in the stands. And, once we get past today, then we'll talk about that stuff later.
As far as Manny went, again, the power numbers, when you look at the max exit velocity is right where it's always been. It's his average exit velocity that's gone down by about 3-4 miles an hour when you kind of peek under the hood. Are you seeing some physical reason for that? Are you seeing something mechanical? Again, it comes back to consistency, where there are times where you're seeing Manny have the type of swings he's typically had.
Yeah, I think it's just this part of the season, he just hasn't been swinging it well. And so the numbers aren't going to look great, no matter where you look at them. But I know one thing I know about Manny is, like, at the end of the season, his numbers all look about the same. And we're expecting that to happen again this year.
You get to about 200 plate appearances. That's usually where this stuff tends to start to normalize. And I wonder also, as it relates to Tatis, you're seeing him pull the ball a lot less and even less in the air. Does it get to a point where you see process numbers change and you want guys to make adjustments, whether that's Tatis, whether that's Manny?
Yeah, we want them to just play baseball and help us win. That's what we're worried about. And I think, those guys are focused on that too. We've seen it from Tatis here this last week or two, where he's stopped worrying about trying to hit homers and he's worried about helping us win games, and he's been very productive.
And really the flip side of that too is, again, at 200 at-bats, plate appearances roughly, you see things normalize. But with guys who have a track record, several thousand at-bats, where they've done it in a different way, does it change sort of the when you want to intervene more?
Oh, 100%. You got guys that are, Manny's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. I'm not going to freak out after 150, 200 bats. And then you got Tatis, who's, I consider a generational player. I've seen him be really good at times. I'm just going to trust that those guys are going to figure it out, honestly. And it's not like we don't intervene. We're talking to these guys every day. That's what we have coaches for. It's not that they're immune to the coaching. Right. So, we're trying to figure it out all together. We're in this together. They're not on an island by themselves. And I think that's the biggest piece of this, is that we've got their backs.
I guess just related to it, is there going to be a thing you're looking for to see that's different, where are you looking for Tatis to pull the ball more in the air, for instance? I'm saying something more process than outcome driven.
Me personally, no, I don't think that's process driven. I think that's definitely a result of him pulling the ball in the air. Process driven is swinging at the right pitches, not swinging at the bad ones, and taking a good swing and being aggressive.
Same with Manny?
Yeah, same with Manny. If they're trying to do a certain thing, get a certain result out of a swing, it's going down a scary road. It's the same thing like pitching that I can relate to. Is if I'm throwing a pitch expecting to get a certain result, like once the ball leaves my hand, I have no control of what's going to happen. The hitter could be completely guessing. I could have tipped the pitch, whatever. And I feel the same way about those guys taking at bats. If they're taking good swings, having a good approach at the plate, the results will eventually come.
All right, that is Craig Stammen right there before the Padres take on the Philadelphia Phillies. So this part of a 6-game road trip for the Padres. They'll come back to San Diego taking on the Mets this weekend. So Randy Vasquez on the mound. Some interesting stuff. I mean, a lot of interesting stuff from Craig Stammen. And as you can imagine, a lot of the conversation is always going to be about Manny. It's also always going to be about Fernando Tatis. But I will mention this. Randy Vasquez on the mound for San Diego tonight. It was about a week, I think it was actually a week ago today, that Vasquez took on the Philadelphia Phillies. He took the loss. He gave up 4 earned runs, gave up 8 hits, I think went 5 2/3, gave up 3 home runs. Now, the good thing for Randy Vasquez is 3 of those home runs were all solo shots. I want to say it was 2 outs in the first, 2 outs in the second, and 2 outs in the third, until Randy Vasquez kind of got into a little bit of a groove here. But it's going to be an interesting, start for him. I think it's, when you look at some of the pitching matchups and Christopher Sanchez, you got Wheeler that's going to be on the mound these next couple of days. You always look at games like, all right, this is the game that they have to get. And honestly, I just kind of look at the Padres and the way their offense has been so inconsistent. I mean, I'm looking at some of these quotes here that Craig Stammen had in regards. I'll use Manny Machado as part of that conversation, with just the clip that we just heard. He said at the end of the season, his numbers will be the same. You know how many times I've heard that about Machado, and it's pretty much played out every single year. I don't know if I feel that way going into this season or 2 months through the season. I mean, his batting average is so incredibly low. We'll see how things play out. The Tatis piece of it. He said about Tatis, don't try to hit home runs, just try to help us win games. And frankly, to be honest with you, maybe over the last couple of weeks, that's been some good advice for Tatis, because he does look a lot more comfortable at the plate. He's clearly not trying to hit home runs. Now, we did finally hit a home run on Saturday, but it's not like he's hit 3-4 home runs over the last couple of weeks. But every conversation about the Padres offense obviously goes right back to those two players. And we'll see what they're able to do against the Phillies, and what they're able to do over this little stretch here. Jace Bowen, obviously a part of the lineup today for the San Diego Padres. I like what Craig Stammen said about just letting him get through his debut. We'll worry about everything else. Go ahead and just get through your debut, and we'll figure out everything else after that. All right, let's do this when we come back. In the 4 o'clock hour, we'll spend some time. I got some good sound from Jeff Passan and from Ken Rosenthal that we'll get into. But coming up next, I want to talk about, I saw something here, NBA Finals. We obviously know what's going on. We know that that's going to start tomorrow. But there were some more rumors here in regards to LeBron potentially joining the Golden State Warriors. And Brent, I got to ask you this question about the face of the NBA, because I tried talking about this a little bit yesterday. I'm going to show you what I searched on AI and how AI responded to who's the face of the NBA. We'll do that coming up next. Stay right here. Schaefer and Sliwa Show on San Diego Sports 760. Welcome back to San Diego Sports 760. If you're out driving around, appreciate you guys being here. If you're here on YouTube, thank you very much for being a part of the chat and just being here in general. I saw something a little bit earlier this morning, and, obviously the NBA Finals and a lot of attention towards the NBA. Give the NBA a lot of credit. I mean, whether you're a huge NBA fan or not, it's been impressive. The Western Conference Finals, now all of a sudden you got Wemby and the Knicks. I'm sure those are going to do massive ratings. Well, let's just say I think there's times where people try to be opportunistic with some of the stories. I'm going to read something here. Tim Kawakami, who's been covering up in the Bay Area for a while, been covering the Golden State Warriors, does a great job doing it. I'm going to read a quote from him. There's a report that the Warriors are a live option for LeBron, and the Warriors could offer him, the most they can give them, I think, is $15.1 million, the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. I'm going to read the exact quote. I think the Warriors would be a very live option. Check that. I think the process has already started, and the Warriors are a live option. I've just kind of assumed, and however you guys watch the NBA or watch LeBron James, as somebody, I've covered the Lakers now for 10 years, and there's been, my God, I don't know of another player. I mean, I'm sure there's definitely players, but as far as kind of a polar reaction where you're one way or the other on LeBron James, either people love him, either people can't stand him. I could tell you from a Laker fan base perspective, it's all over the place. I was I just assumed here that LeBron's going to come back to the Lakers. And every time I see stories like this, I'm like, is this just simple positioning? Is this just to try to have LeBron get the most amount of money that he possibly can for the Lakers? Brent, you think there's a world that LeBron James teams up, which, by the way, I'm not completely opposed to. Is there a world that he teams up with Draymond Green, one of his good friends, Steph Curry? Obviously, Jimmy Butler's there. I don't know when Jimmy's coming back, probably after the new year just because of his injury. Is there a world that LeBron would take $15 million and go to the Bay?
Only if he thought he was going to win a chip there. That's about it.
Can I help answer your question there? I don't think they're winning a chip.
I was just going to say, I don't think they would, even if, Jimmy Butler's back and healthy. I just think they're too old. This is one of those things where if he would go there, like, this would have been 8 years ago, I would have thrown a fit and I would have been mad about it. But if he goes there,
kind of like the KD situation.
Yeah. But if he goes there now, he's late enough in his career to where, this isn't a knock on LeBron. It's just with his age, he's not going to go to any team in the NBA anymore and make them instant championship contenders anymore.
I've always thought this with LeBron going into this season. I've always just assumed he's going to end back up with the Lakers. He's not going to make $52 million, $55 million, something along those lines. But I've just assumed that he'll eventually make, okay, he takes a price. He's making 30 a year, 35. I don't know what the number is. The Lakers will figure out what that number is. But I've just always assumed that. If you said there's one team he leaves to, well, what's the incentive to leave? Because these teams can't pay him unless they're doing a sign and trade, and you're giving the Lakers an Evan Mobley or a Jared Allen, or you're finding a way to give the Lakers obviously a good asset. And honestly, I think the Lakers would be interested in that. I don't think it's going to happen. But if he leaves for any other team, doesn't he, like you said, doesn't he have to think, I got a shot at winning an NBA championship? And I'm not telling you the Cavs are going to go compete for a championship next year, but wouldn't we have a better chance with Cleveland just signing straight up with them than he would with the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference?
Probably, but I don't think he's going to go back to Cleveland again. If he never went back to Cleveland, the first time, then I think this would be a bigger deal. But, he already went back to Cleveland. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal if he goes back again. I almost think,
unless he's like telling everybody, hey, I'm done. This is it. This is my retirement tour. But again, like I go back to, I think this is all just a song and dance. He's going to end up with the Lakers. He'll play his 9th year with the Lakers next year.
I think he's going to stay in California. I think that's the big thing with him now, because all of his kids are enrolled in school out here.
Yep.
He's doing all of his like non-basketball, like his media stuff, like that barbershop show that he has and all that other stuff.
Sure.
Where do they film all that? Out in California. So
everything's in LA. Yeah. I think
so
this whole operation.
I think he will stay in California, even if he's not a Laker. I think that, depending on what happens with the whole Kawhi situation with the Clippers, I think he could end up with the Clippers or Golden State. But I think he's going to stay in California.
There's a little bit of exhaustion, and I know that kind of comes with kind of the LeBron conversation. I could tell you this. I think there's a lot of Laker fans that have been ready to move on. But he was also really good for them last year and was, I think, the best player in that Rockets series. The question is just going to be, when is that franchise going to start moving on and, obviously build around Luka? I will say, yesterday you and I were talking. Obviously, you got Victor Wembanyama. They're going to start a series. By the way, we're going to have somebody come on, join us on the show at 5 o'clock to talk Spurs and the Knicks, look at it from a Spurs perspective. But you and I were chatting about this a little bit earlier. This was yesterday. And we're talking about the faces of the NBA. So I type in the faces of the NBA right now, just in a Google search, AI overview. LeBron James remains the undisputed face of the NBA, while a highly talented new generation of international rising stars like Victor Wembanyama, Luka Doncic are stepping into the spotlight. But this search, they're like, yeah, you can fight this as much as you want, but when the dust settles, it's still going to be LeBron James, and that's crazy to hear. 41 years old, and this man is still driving the NBA. What were you going to say there?
Oh, I was going to say, the reason I said that yesterday was, and I looked it up today, you look at the teams that have the most nationally televised games. There's 4 teams in the league this year that had 35 appearances on national TV this year. Golden State, the Lakers, the Knicks, and the Thunder. The Spurs only had about 24. So there's still, the league is still pushing LeBron and Steph on the forefront. And then, I just looked at this too. Top selling jerseys this year. Number 1 top selling jersey, Steph Curry. LeBron's down he's at number 5.
Okay.
Because it was Steph, Luka, Jalen Brunson, and then Wembanyama. So
still top 5 is wildly impressive. Wildly impressive.
And then even, we kind of talked about this off air yesterday. Mm-hmm. Steph Curry signed that huge shoe deal with that Chinese shoe company yesterday. If he wasn't still one of the bigger faces of the league, I don't see them really signing him because there's worth like $400 million or something.
Did they come out with financials?
Yeah.
They came out with it?
Yeah, it came out this morning.
All right. Yeah, I was trying to look for it. I couldn't find any of the financials to it. Hey, it's going to take, in order for the league to kind of change faces, then you probably got to get Victor Wembanyama. Even if he doesn't win an NBA championship, he's obviously in the spotlight. He's going to be there, and we're going to watch him for potentially 7 games.
10-year, $400 million.
10-year, $400 million for Steph Curry, and that's obviously off the court. All right, when we come back, we got the wrap coming up. Just to give everyone a quick idea, 4:15, I want to play some sound from Ken Rosenthal on Tarik Skubal, talking about the Padres specifically. Darnay Tripp, NBC Sports San Diego, or NBC San Diego Sports, is coming up at 4:30. So we got a lot to get into. Appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Schaefer and Sliwa Show. Stay right here. San Diego Sports 760.
This report is sponsored by Taco Bell. Padres are in Philly right now, taking on the Phillies, and we are in the top of the second inning, and we have no score. In NFL news, we got a couple of contract extensions. The Atlanta Falcons and wide receiver Drake London agreed to a 4-year, $141 million extension, and the Steelers came to a 4-year, $100 million extension with linebacker Nick Herbig. And tomorrow night, we got game 1 of the NBA Finals in San Antonio. A tip of that game will be after 5:30. Taco Bell's new jalapeno citrus salsa, bright, spicy, zesty, impossible to ignore. It brings main character energy to every bite. Not just a sauce, it's a star. Only at participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only while supplies last.
All right, hour number 2, Schaefer and Sliwa. We got a good rest of the show lined up for everybody. I want to just give everyone a quick heads up. Got some great sound from Ken Rosenthal on Tarik Skubal and potentially the interest of the San Diego Padres. Darnay, Tripp, NBC San Diego Sports is going to join us at 4:30. We'll talk NBA Finals coming up at 5 o'clock with Dillon, Emery. But before we do all of that, let's get to the wrap.
It's time for the wrap. Presented by Sombrero Mexican Food. Check out their website at sombreromex.com.
Are you looking forward to the NBA Finals matchup more than the Western Conference Finals?
Ooh, Finals more than Western Conference Finals. I don't know. You know, I got to be honest with you. I was so incredibly hyped up for that Western Conference Finals matchup. I think there was so much hype because these two squads have a little bit of history against each other. San Antonio kind of came out of nowhere in the Western Conference this year. I want to say they took 4 of 5 during the regular season, if you count the that playing tournament, or not the playing tournament, the in-season tournament. I think my hype was more in the Western Conference Finals, but as this series goes on against the Knicks, that can change. But I feel like I had more hype in the Western Conference Finals. How about you?
No, for me, it's the finals. I got the series that I wanted. I wanted the Knicks and I wanted the Spurs.
Yep. You and a lot of people.
That NBA most of all.
But I will say this, like, I do think there were a lot of fans that did not want to see the Thunder move on. Like that thing shifted so quick where a lot of people were rooting against them.
But I think that, there's a lot more storylines with this finals this year.
Yeah.
Because either Wemby's going to win his first championship or the Knicks are going to end their
first time since the early 70s.
60-some year drought of their championship. So either way, we're going to have some big name story and stuff to press. So there's a lot more things to talk about opposed to like some of those years when it's just like the Warriors in there and the biggest story was 5 games or 6.
It's such a good point. And I think there is not that in-season tournament is that big of a deal, but they did play in kind of a bigger stage for this one game, and it was the Knicks and the San Antonio Spurs, and Knicks won that game.
And I think because of Madison Square Garden in New York, we're going to have kind of like what you get with the Lakers and stuff, where we'll have the celebrity element because, Tracy Morgan and all those guys are going to be a big factor in everything. So I think that might help to hype everything up a little bit.
I think the thing you said, too, is so critical, so important. Just the fact that the New York Knicks have a chance of winning an NBA championship, like, I think I almost forget about that sometimes. You're just, I know, you think about the Knicks franchise, you definitely don't think of winning. By the way, Darren Smith is going to join the show tomorrow, and it will be like, I told him, I'm like, we're doing basically a Knicks pregame show for you. Obviously, we'll talk about everything, but Darren's going to join us tomorrow. All right, you got me a little bit more hyped up about the series, but not only was that Thunder series phenomenal, it also lived up to the hype. All right, what's next?
What venue would you most want to attend a game?
Is this kind of tied to the Madison Square Garden piece of it? If it's a big game. Have you ever been to MSG?
No, I've never been to New York at all.
Been to Madison Square Garden, but which I will tell you, it's one of it is an unbelievable place to watch a game. It is theater, right? Like it's definitely got that feeling of, yeah, this is a place that you have to watch a big sporting event. You know where I go? I go to like not random places, iconic places. Going to Chicago and seeing a Cubbies game would be amazing. Going to Lambeau Field and seeing the Packers would be amazing. I've been to Fenway. I've been to Yankee Stadium, so I kind of caught a couple of those. The only other place I could really think of, unless you're taking me to like a huge college football game in the South, I'm in for that, or a Premier League game somewhere in Europe.
I'd say maybe Fenway.
Fenway's a cool park.
Back in the day before they essentially neutered it and killed it, I maybe would have wanted to go to.
When did they neuter and kill it?
No, not that. I'm getting to what they neutered and killed. The world's largest outdoor cocktail party between Georgia and Florida. They used to play in a neutral site, and it was like one of the bigger rivalries. But now, they don't want the association with being called the cocktail party and all this other stuff. And with them changing the rules for their conference games and everything, it's kind of been watered down.
Yeah, but I think what you're talking about there in regards to an SEC football game, like I've never been to one of those games. It's funny, the last 2 years I've gone to both Rose Bowls. The playoff tournament the college football playoff now, the first game or one of the games, right, is there. And I keep saying to myself, I'm like, oh my God, I could watch big time college football. They are. Ohio State, Oregon played in the first game. Indiana, Alabama played in the second game. I'm like, I get some real freaking college football. Both games were blowouts. By halftime, nobody was watching.
I forgot all about that. The Rose Bowl, definitely, that'd be on my list too.
It's an easy one to accomplish. You could do that. By the way, you go UCLA, SCSU. What's coming up this year?
For an actual Rose Bowl.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For like a bowl game.
What else you got there?
What's your confidence level if the Padres take 2 out of 3 in Philadelphia?
I want to feel more positive and confident, but a lot of times that's completely based on what the team does. So when players aren't performing well, it's tough to be confident about them. When teams aren't performing well, it's tough to be confident about them. So I think right now with the Padres, especially after getting swept by Philadelphia, I'd be lying to you if I said I feel great about it, right? My confidence level isn't that high. That's why I think this month of June is going to be so important for San Diego and for the Padres and what the rest of the season looks like. But not that confident. Not that confident. They take 2 or 3, and you got, I think if I'm right here, is it Wheeler and Sanchez in games 2 and 3? I think it is. Well, I can look that up a little bit later. But the team has to show why you're confident. Right now, they're not giving everybody the most reason to be confident. How about you?
I think they could, because they have a better road record.
Their road record is better than home.
They're 500 at home, and they're 6 games above 500 on the road. So just for that fact, I would say, sure, I think they can do it. And
it's so weird listening to, we listen to the Phillies broadcaster, or one writes for Philly.com, and just kind of listening to him, how he was talking about the Phillies. The entire time that I'm listening to that conversation, I'm like, man, they're as frustrated as the Phillies as we are of San Diego. And I just always think of Philly as like, yeah, they're up. They're always going to be competing in the NL. And they're technically, if you look at their season, they're only 1 game over 500.
The Padres are one of those teams where whenever we are convinced that they're not going to do something, then they'll just go and do it. If we sit here and say,
sure,
they're going to play the Dodgers, they're going to get crushed, and this series means nothing. Then what happens? Of course, it didn't happen this year, but in years past, then we'll win the series against the Dodgers.
When the expectations, when there's
so
less
low,
expectations. By the way, next after today, so Aaron Nola obviously on the mound tonight, but Sanchez tomorrow, Wheeler coming up on Thursday. So you're going to get two of the best pitchers in all of baseball. We saw what Sanchez did against the Padres. All right, what else do we have there?
What do you think the Padres' final record will be at the end of June? They played 26 games.
26 games. Month of June. If I say they go 13-13, is that a bad month if they go 13-13? I don't think it is. I think, based off of kind of their trajectory, based off on how poor they've been hitting, and you're also going to have there's going to be some tougher matchups coming in. If you look at that schedule late June, I'll tell you right now here, late June, here's what you have. Atlanta, LA, Chicago, 3 series in a row to close out. Obviously 3 teams. I don't really know what the Cubbies are. They're a little bit all over the place. Well, they have 2 10-game winning streaks and 1 10-game losing streak.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the hell to make of that. I say they go 13-13. I say through the 26th, they play 500 baseball.
They might go 2 games above that. They might be a little above that, I think.
Look, if you're 8 games over 500 going into July 1st, I got to be honest. I don't hate it. It's not ideal. It's not perfect, but you're kind of weathering the storm, and your hope is that some of these guys will eventually get going.
Well, I'm looking at their schedule for June. They got the Mets, and they're kind of like the Cubs. They're all over the place. They got the Reds, but the Reds just threw Ellie De La Cruz on the IL, so he's going to be out for a couple weeks, so he might miss that series. The Orioles are a joke this year. The Cardinals, they're kind of iffy. So,
sure.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, it's kind of backloaded towards the end with the Dodgers and the Braves and the Cubs, but I think they could go maybe 2 games above 500.
All right, let's hope they can do that. Now, I tell you, the only way they can do that is obviously the players who are supposed to be delivering need to deliver. It's funny. I got here in my notes, and I'm like, when do I get into this? I'm basically pleading with every star that the Padres have. The thing that scares me the most about the position that the Padres are in right now is you're thinking big picture in San Diego. And honestly, it's so hard to think big picture about this team and this franchise right now because they're in this, you got to win now based off their payroll and some of the numbers they obviously have attached to some of their key players. I'm pleading with Tatis, pleading with Machado, pleading with Jackson Merrill, pleading with Xander Bogaerts. It's really going to be on all these guys' backs. And if you got any shot to go make some noise this year, you got to have your stars obviously deliver. And this isn't just a San Diego thing. I mean, I saw it last year in the postseason. A lot of these big bats for the Philadelphia Phillies, they had issues as well. But, in SD, this is where this entire franchise, it's dependent on. It's dependent on their stars delivering. I mean, watching Tatis hit his first home run on Saturday, you and I yesterday, Brent, we had a topic and a conversation, and it was about, will this kind of unleash Tatis in regards to getting that first home run? It has to. Like the city, the fan base. I mean, everything is. I hate to put more on Tatis's shoulders, but it's the truth. The difference I would say with Manny and Xander is these dudes are older now. They can't be bad this early into their contract just because they're getting older. But Tatis, you're 27 years old. 27 years old. That's not a player we should be having any conversation about in regards to, hey, is this dude just not going to be the same player? Is he declining? Is he this? Is he that? That home run that he hit on Saturday has to unleash Fernando Tatis Jr. It has to, and hopefully he took some pressure off of him. I mean, he's already got a double today. Now, Padres didn't score on that situation, but that's not Tatis's fault. But, by the time the month of June is over, can we be saying that Tatis is up to 7 or 8 home runs, something along those lines? And, I say that, and I understand just in the game of baseball, so much of this is streaks. And if Manny Machado gets going, then you know what? You might not be able to stop Manny Machado for a solid month or so. But Tatis is the one that I keep circling. I know there's a conversation about a lot of these players, but pleading for Tatis to get it going. The city of San Diego is different when Tatis has it going. So hopefully he's able to make it obviously happen in the month of June. Okay, I teased it a couple different times, and I want to get to it here. Ken Rosenthal was talking about Tarik Skubal and how there's a few teams that he expects to be in the race for Skubal. And one of those teams is the San Diego Padres. Let's talk about it when we come back. Darnay Tripp's going to join us. NBC San Diego Sports. He's going to join us at 4:30. Appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Stay right here. Schaefer and Sliwa Show. I'm Alan Sliwa, San Diego Sports 760.
All right, guys, it is Schaefer again for my friends at the all-new Jamul Casino Resort, the Players Place. We've been telling you for a while now about the hotel and spa over at Jamul. You will love it. You can experience elevated luxury with their refined hotel stay, rooftop relaxation, indulgent spa treatments, all the excitement of Jamul Casino Resort seamlessly brought together now in one unforgettable destination. And now take your stay to the next level. Exclusive hotel packages crafted for the ultimate escape. While you're there, so many great dining options. Jamul 23, Tony Gwynn's. At Jamul 23, enjoy lobster buffet every day. We're talking about lobster buffet, all you can eat, plus dozens of other delicious stations. Start your morning with their new signature breakfast buffet Monday through Friday, 8 to 10:30 a.m. with made-to-order omelets and fresh fruit and sweet and savory favorites. And at Tony Gwynn's, enjoy San Diego's favorite endless dining experience. That's every Wednesday through Sunday at Tony Gwynn Sports Pub at the all-new Jamul Casino Resort, the Players Place.
All right, San Diego Sports 760 congratulates all our winners in iHeartRadio's Thank a Teacher powered by Donors Choose. There's still time to donate to a classroom project, and your donation will be matched by Donors Choose. Help us say thank you to the educators shaping our future now at iHeartRadio.com/teachers. I want to also give everyone just a quick reminder here. And we've talked a little bit about this. You know, we've got this great promotion going on with the San Diego County Fair. So just a reminder here, we're going to be giving away a 4-pack of tickets to the San Diego Fair, San Diego County Fair. So just stay tuned in. We'll give you the reminder. We'll take the 7th caller. Not ready to do it yet, but we will do it during the show. Again, a chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to the San Diego County Fair. Padres obviously taking on the Phillies right now. I want to play some sound. You know, a little bit earlier today, kind of looking here, what are some different topics that we could talk about? And the conversation has already started on Tarik Skubal. And, you know, obviously we know one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. He was actually asked a question here, and then I'll go to it. But the trade rumors have already started. And part of the reason why they started is because the Detroit Tigers are 23-38. Nobody's expecting Skubal to be there long term. And there are certain teams that are clearly associated with the Detroit Tigers. I'm going to read a quote here from Skubal in regards to all the trade conversation. He said, with all the trade stuff, we just got to go start winning games. Last year, there was not one word about me being traded. Winning calms all that stuff down, and that's what this team needs to do. Okay, well, here's what's not going to help some of this conversation is when Ken Rosenthal goes on and starts breaking down some potential landing spots. And I want you to take a listen here to what he says about Skubal and the San Diego Padres, specifically with AJ Preller. Take a listen.
Some of the other teams I mentioned, the Padres, of course they're going to be in. They've got AJ Preller as their GM. They've got a staff that is still questionable. Rotation, I should say, that is still questionable. Their bullpen, of course, is the best in the game. They need offense, at least from what we've seen so far, but AJ Preller would be in. And I would not be surprised, as I wrote, if he is already calling around, trying to get prospects from other teams to put in a Skubal deal.
So it's such a good point there, because I got a couple of people here commenting on YouTube. Do the Padres even have the prospects to go trade for Skubal? And you hear Ken Rosenthal, obviously putting the Padres in the mix. They just think about the type of player Skubal is and adding him to a rotation. Think about how impactful that can be for your team. But the Padres are put in a very kind of weird position right now with AJ Preller. I've talked about this before. The question is going to come down to, you don't trade for Skubal if you're sitting at 500 in mid-July. Like, obviously that doesn't happen. The only reason why you trade for Skubal is if you think, if we get this player, we have a legitimate chance of winning a World Series. And, I'll say this based on, their current roster and what we've seen already this season. Do I think they're winning 3 rounds or 4 rounds? I mean, you obviously got to get to the wild card, then the divisional, then you got to play for the pennant, and then obviously you have the World Series. Is this team giving you indications that they can do that? It's that's why we've kind of gone back and forth with this. I don't want the San Diego Padres trading for Skubal if they just think that, hey, you know what, we're just going to try to throw a Hail Mary here. I want them to trade for him because they feel like they got a legitimate chance. Now, think about some of the competition. I only played a portion of Ken Rosenthal right there. He was sitting back. He was talking about how Philadelphia could be very aggressive. Imagine Skubal, Wheeler, and Sanchez in, obviously as your 1, 2, 3. I mean, that's as dirty as it gets. He also made a point about the Dodgers, that do the Dodgers get aggressive in a situation like this? It was kind of interesting. Ken Rosenthal was basically saying, nobody knows what's going to happen to baseball over the next handful of years. What is going to happen? Will there be a salary cap? What's it going to look like over this next stretch? Do a team like the Dodgers, who have, obviously a deep farm system, that have endless dollars, that can figure out ways to go get a player like Skubal, do they say, we've already won 2 in a row? Yeah, I know we got Blake Snell and Tyler Glass now on top of Shohei Ohtani and Yamamoto. Do they say, yeah, screw it, F it, which is something that they've done already these last couple of years? Do they, even if they don't actually land him, they just drive the price up for everybody else? And we've seen the Padres in situations like this where the price has been driven up and then they got to go spend all the capital that they have. So it's not that the competition's not going to be there. I don't even know if the Padres have enough prospects to even have interest with Detroit. But to me, I keep going back to the same thing. The team's got to show you that they have a legitimate chance to win, and they're a Skubal away from having that opportunity. I just don't think this team has shown that so far. It doesn't mean that it can't change. I'm not trying to tell you, I'm not trying to sit here and be, as negative as possible, but I'm trying to be realistic. I'm just trying to have a more realistic conversation when it comes to what the future could look like in SD. And if you're going to go out there and make, obviously aggressive trades like that as well. Looking at, it's kind of funny. I'm looking at some of the comments and we could kind of look at, I think a lot of people have the same theme here. It's like, yeah, well, if they can start hitting, and of course the Padres can use help in regards to their starting rotation, but it's got to make sense. Let's just put it that way. Okay. I'm going to do this right now. And we're going to give away some tickets to the San Diego County Fair. Win a 4-pack of tickets to the San Diego County Fair right now. The phone number, 877-767-4760. 877-767-4760. Caller number 7 is going to win a 4-pack of tickets right now to the San Diego County Fair. Once upon a fair, there was a tale of food, fun, friends, family, laughter, tradition, music, amazement, and more. The San Diego County Fair, the biggest and longest running event in San Diego County, makes its triumphant return from June 10th through July 5th, closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. Visit sdfair.com to plan your happily ever after. Again, 877-767-4760. We will take caller number 7. You're winning tickets to the fair. When we come back, we're going to bring on Darnay Tripp, who obviously is part of NBC Sports San Diego. He's going to join us. We'll have continued conversation around the San Diego Padres. Stay right here. Schaefer and Sliwa Show. I'm Alan Sliwa, San Diego Sports 760.
This report is sponsored by Airtasker. The Padres are in Philadelphia taking on the Phillies. It's Randy Vasquez going against Aaron Nola. Right now we are in the third inning and the Padres are up 2-0. In NFL news, we had a couple contract extensions today. Atlanta and wide receiver Drake London agreed to a 4-year, $141 million extension, and the Steelers came to a 4-year, $100 million extension with linebacker Nick Herbig. Tomorrow night, we got game 1 of the NBA Finals in San Antonio. It's going to be Spurs and Knicks. They will tip that off at 5:30. Meet Chris. He's handy with tools and tech and likes earning extra income on his own terms. With AirTasker, he chooses which tasks he wants, when to work, and names his price. Download the AirTasker app or go to airtasker.com. AirTasker, get anything done.
All right, welcome back to San Diego Sports 760, live on the iHeartRadio app. We're also live on YouTube. If you want to join us, Schaefer and Sliwa Show, you can subscribe there. Be a part of the show on video as well. We appreciate everybody being here. Also, appreciate our next guest, Darnay Tripp, NBC San Diego Sports, taking some time to join us. Darnay, what's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back on.
Well, look, you're coming on without Schaefer. I appreciate that. I know you guys are tight. You guys are close. What'd you guys talk Sox last time?
No.
I think it was Sox conversation, right? When he made his TV appearance.
I come on despite Schaefer.
Okay, hey, that's also another way to do it. Darnay, I started the show today. We start the month of June, and 2 months in. It's so funny how I look at the Padres. It's like, if you told me before the season started, here we are, June 2nd, and you gave me no details. The season hadn't started yet, and you're like, hey, they're 6 games over 500. They're 4th best record in the NL. I don't need any details. I'm signing up for it immediately, and maybe, that's maybe the ceiling for San Diego, not as high as I thought walking in. What do you make of the position that they're in, 6 games over 500, and obviously kind of a critical month here in front of them?
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, it could certainly be a lot worse. And when you consider what they've done or what they haven't done offensively, to be in the position that they are in, you have to feel good about that. I do think from a Padres perspective, I know from the fan standpoint, you hear references to 2021, and that was a game where or a season where there were how many games over 500 in August, and then things just went terribly south.
Yep,
complete and total collapse. And we know 6 games that can disappear in a heartbeat. And just 2 weeks ago, they were a half game up on the Dodgers, and now there's a little bit of distance between the two. And so now that there's no guarantee that happens. And I do think if it were a more normal year offensively from Merrill, Tatis, and Machado, maybe a down year, but not to the extent where
closer
you're
closer to their averages.
Guys, a little bit, maybe like a tick or two below average. And if it were the type of year where we've seen in the past, even last season, where the bench isn't giving you much, it'd be hard to have a whole lot of hope that okay, these guys are going to kind of get it clicking a little bit. I do think there are capable bats in the lineup, and we've seen that. Even if Andujar's down a little bit, even if Ty France's numbers have tailed off. We saw what Campy did early in the season. We saw what, Ramon Laureano did early in the year. It's just so the slump that Machado, Merrill, and Tatis have been on is so pronounced. It makes you think, okay, at some point it's going to tick up. And even if it just gets to that point where they're a little bit below average, I mean, even if these guys were 730 OPS across the board, it's not going to get any of these guys, too many all-star votes, but, capable ball players, what would that do for the team? Because that's a few hits in key spots against the Phillies, against the Dodgers, and in some of these other series against the Nats, and that could make a difference. And so I think there's no telling how this is going to go. And I understand from a fan standpoint, we've been through this before, we've seen the collapse. I don't know if I'm there yet. I do find myself leaning on the side of, you're saying, okay, They built themselves that cushion. Unfortunately, they're having to make use of it right now. But there's a reason to believe that these guys will get going enough to kind of make up for some of the offensive woes that we've dealt with the first couple months of the season.
Darnay, Tripp taking some time here to join us, NBC San Diego Sports. You know, it's Darnay, it's interesting because when you started listing the names and you're like, yeah, I know Andujar's down a little bit. I know Ty France, you know, little ups and downs. And you're naming off players that are not supposed to carry the San Diego Padres, right? Like the guys that you mentioned in the beginning, those are the ones that are supposed to carry this team. I asked this question. Kevin Acee was on the show yesterday, and we're kind of going back and forth. And there was a report or just a YouTube clip, a clip that we played a little bit earlier. Ken Rosenthal talking about Skubal of the Detroit Tigers. And I asked this to Acee yesterday that, hey, what world do you say that AJ Preller says, I'm going to be ultra aggressive like I always am? And what world does he say, yeah, I'm pumping the brakes? And imagine that for a second. I mean, Preller's not one to pump the brakes. What does it look like for AJ Preller to say, as we're getting closer to the trade deadline, I just don't want to invest anymore in this team?
Well, it would be, so out of character for AJ Preller that it's almost kind of hard to imagine, that scenario. I think the thing that you have to factor in this year as well is like, there's going to be some different conversations with some different owners that he's never dealt with, until this year and until this trade deadline. Sure. And so what are the nature of those conversations? What is being handed down to him? What orders is he having to follow? I would think, like, given the little that we've heard from, just some kind of statements and that sort of thing from Kwanzaa Jones and Jose Feliciano, like, it would be a little bit of a surprise right out of the gates if they're like, no, we're scaling back. This is their chance to make their first impression. And obviously they'll have a press conference or something along those lines at some point, and we'll get a chance to hear from them. And these questions will be asked of them. But, actions obviously speak louder than words. And at some point, when the trade deadline rolls around, or even before then, they're going to have to decide, how they want to move forward. And I would think from their standpoint, a little goodwill for the fan base and kind of get people on their side, whether or not it's like, pulling off blockbusters. You might not necessarily feel comfortable doing that, but even the types of trades that they made last year, aside from Mason Miller, where you upgrade the lineup with O'Hearn and Laureano, you go get Freddie Fermin, even though that trade isn't looking great right now.
You're right.
I think some improvements around the margins would even be a positive, as opposed to like really scaling back, certainly being sellers. But it's going to be really, really interesting because, again, completely different ownership group. And this team has a month and a half, 2 months to kind of give us an idea of like really who they are and what the approach should be once the deadline rolls around.
And they could change that narrative. I think right now a lot of people are looking at the Padres. They're looking at run differential. They're looking at just what is it, the eye test. Obviously, they're looking at their star players, and that narrative can be changed. So I don't want to make it sound like, for all I know, the Padres can go on a run just like they have.
Well, I think it was 2023, and the team clearly did not have it. They 100% did not have it. And you could have parted with Blake Snell. You could have parted with Josh Hader. Who knows what you would have gotten in those deals. They swept, I want to say, the Rangers right before the deadline. That was the year I think the Rangers won the World Series. Obviously, it hadn't happened yet, but it's a quality ball club. You sweep them, and you feel like you got a little juice now going into the trade deadline, and they did not sell. And that was the year where maybe you want to go for it, but I think it was clear those first, few months of the year they did not have it, and you kind of let that maybe little hot streak before the deadline impact your decision more than it should have. So to your point, it doesn't take much for AJ Preller to be like, all right, let's go for it.
Well, Darnay, it's such the thing that I find interesting when we talk about new ownership, because I think the new ownership piece, you're right. We have no idea what their approach is going to be. If they look at certain things, how they look at this team and this franchise and spending and everything else. It's funny when I hear that do they want to show some goodwill towards the fan base? Do they want to show, and I get it, there is a PR piece of every business that you want to be on the right side of. But at the same time, like, I wonder, what if, let's hypothetically, if they said, hey, look, the way we are spending, we don't think is sustainable. We just want to be smarter. We don't want to, we really value our farm system. And let's just use as an example, and I know this is not the only player that they have, but the most popular player in the farm system is, of course, Ethan Salas. What if, without trying to be disrespectful to the city, or, hey, they're not trying to show that they don't want to win because they really do. What if they're just trying to be responsible owners? Like, I wonder if, if their hand is forced a little bit because of the situation and how much the Padres are already invested into this season.
Yeah, and that's where if it's a stand pat type of situation, you probably can't draw sweeping conclusions of, like, what does this mean? How does this define their approach and the types of owners that they are? Like, it's too soon to tell. You can't really know at that point. And look, the fact of the matter is, like, to your point, like, they certainly have some pieces, I'm sure, in the minors that they could deal with, and the folks that really follow the farm really closely are excited about and would be maybe sad to see leave outside of Ethan Salas. But, with every year, it feels like there's a little bit less for AJ Preller to kind of maneuver with. So there's a lot of different factors kind of going into that, and you can't necessarily draw any conclusions about, like, what it means for the type of ownership that is in place right now. And, what's available at what cost, where the team is, there's so many different
variables,
factors, but so many different variables. But, AJ Preller is, look, he hasn't aced every single move, but, he has made, like, what he did in 2024, like getting Tanner Scott and Jason Adam, like, even getting, like, one guy like that, maybe it's not Laureano and O'Hearn and Mason Miller and Freddie Fermin, but maybe if it's, an upgrade at one of those spots, somewhere in the bat, maybe if it's a reliable starting pitcher, it doesn't have to be, we're used to these AJ Preller, like, blockbuster shopping sprees. It doesn't have to be one of those. And
sure.
So there is kind of that in between too, in terms of what their approach could be. But I think anybody who's watched this team, like, you understand there's some weaknesses, and hopefully when that time comes, I think we'd be somewhat satisfied if it's a move along those lines that kind of patches a bit of a hole and makes you feel a little bit better about the team's chances going through September and hopefully on October.
Darnay, Tripp joining us here, NBC San Diego Sports. Darnay, I'm going to ask you just kind of more your personal preference, opinion on this one. We know that the labor negotiations have started and both sides are trying to position themselves. What would you like to see as you look at baseball? And I know it's going to be a little tougher because we look at lens through the San Diego Padres, but what is in the best interest of the sport? What do you think should be the priorities in this labor union? And what do you want to see happen by the time we get to next season?
Yeah, it's a great question. Part of me, I think, is interested in the idea of the cap, but I'm not married to it. I thought what the players proposed in terms of a tax on teams that don't spend, I think there's something interesting there. And, maybe the tax is a little bit, firmer for teams that do go above the threshold. So it is a little bit more prohibitive, and, maybe a, couple tens of millions higher than where it is now, where the Padres, the Padres have had to scale back in spending, but it seems like they're always kind of bumping their heads up against the luxury tax. And so, the salary cap thing is so contentious. I wonder if there's a way to impose something that's like a cap without actually really imposing a true cap. And I don't know if that exists, but I think on the bottom end, on the top end, when you've seen kind of some of these reports and ideas float around, like, that's interesting to me. I'm really interested in, like, what we've heard about revenue sharing, what we heard about pooling media money. Obviously, folks in LA wouldn't love that idea, but that would balance the playing field, certainly, if, teams that have massive, local rights deals are having to kind of share that money with others who, like, the Padres, they don't not have that because of a lack of interest. We know that. We show up Petco Park and we see the passion that's around the club. It's just a different type of media market. And so there's all those elements of it too that are interesting to me. Obviously what happens with salary cap and all that is kind of the top of mind for most folks. But it's just so hard to say at this point. I mean, what I want to see is baseball in like late March of 2027. That's what I want to see. And hopefully when everything shakes out, you see a league where it's a little bit easier. Teams are incentivized to spend and be aggressive, and it's a little bit easier to do so for clubs that are outside of like a top 5 media market.
Darnay, great stuff, brother. Really appreciate the insight. Thank you for coming on the show, and looking forward to chatting with you soon, okay?
Anytime. Thanks for having me on.
All right, that's Darnay Tripp right there, NBC San Diego Sports. All right, to kind of play off of that, I'm getting a little more optimistic because my own selfish tendencies of what I want to see in baseball, I think, is starting to kind of come into play here. We come back, I want to talk a little bit about Jeff Passan was on the Pat McAfee show. And I'm starting to kind of get this feeling like things will eventually push towards, I would just call it a more even, equal playing field. We'll talk about when we come back. Stay right here. Appreciate you guys being a part of the show. This is Schaefer and Sliwa. I'm out. Sliwa, San Diego Sports 760. All right, San Diego Sports 760. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Coming up here at 5 o'clock, by the way, just a heads up, we are going to have a great NBA guest that covers the San Antonio Spurs, Dillon Emery, out in San Antonio, does some pre and post for them, and he's going to help us preview the NBA Finals. The San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks. How much fun is that going to be? How exciting is that going to be? I think it's going to be phenomenal, and clearly it is one of the more, I think, anticipated NBA Finals that we can possibly have. So it's going to be fun to obviously do that. I want to also give everybody a quick reminder here. Just a little bit ago, shout out to our winner for the San Diego County Fair tickets. I also want to give everybody a reminder here. Listen for the Columbia Jordan Sounder during the breaks, and you could call in and win a pair of tickets to Columbia versus Jordan at Snapdragon Stadium. So the game's this Sunday, June 7th at 4 p.m. Columbia, obviously, versus Jordan. See these national teams play as they prepare for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Get tickets at sandiegofc.com/countdown26 or countdown to 26. So that's sandiegofc.com/countdown to 26. So just keep in mind for that, and we'll make sure that obviously we play that. I want to give a shout out here real quick. We are obviously the home of SDFC and spend a lot of time talking about SDFC, and we know the challenge that SDFC has had this year, and hopefully they're able to turn it around. So Sunday, I was watching the Padres lose. Simultaneously, I was watching the San Diego Wave beat Chicago 2-0. And it's funny, every time I have this conversation, whether it's a friend or a family member, I'm born and raised here in San Diego, so it's easy to obviously have these conversations about, all right, the squad's never won a champion, or the city's never won a championship. How the hell do you get your first one? SDFC right now is on top of the NWSL table. So standings wise, they got the most points in the entire NWSL. And it is, they're going to take about a month break right now. But gotta point out, wherever there's success here in SD, we got to give love to. And we saw that with San Diego State baseball. We're trying to, obviously, San Diego Seals were in a playoff series against Toronto, ended up losing in a 3-game set. But a lot of love to the San Diego Wave. Coach Jonas Edivel, I'm going to try to have on potentially at some point this week. I reached out to their public relations department. We'll try to get him on, but shout out to them. That's just, they've been so phenomenal. And to see them as we go into the break, this World Cup break, for them to accomplish what they've been able to accomplish is awesome. So shout out to them on that front. I was going to play this Jeff Passan thing, but I think I'm going to wait till 5:15. I don't want to rush through it because Jeff Passan is talking about, again, just where the MLB labor negotiations are. And the more that I think about it, the more I actually feel like there's some good momentum going in the right direction in regards to that. But our next guest is going to be an NBA guest, and we're going to spend some time talking about the Spurs and the Knicks. I'm still trying to kind of figure out what my prediction is in this series. So, Brent, if I do this to you, if we just, both you and I, trying to make a wild prediction right now, not wild, but I really actually feel like the Knicks are going to make this a series. I think a lot of people were just applying, hey, if it's San Antonio and OKC, whoever gets out is going to win the NBA championship. I don't believe that, and I think part of that has to do with the experience. I watched the San Antonio Spurs. They celebrated as they should to get to the NBA Finals, but they almost celebrated like it was a championship. And they should celebrate like that because they've never been in this position before. You go look at the other side with the Knicks. You got guys that have been in this league for a long time that probably are saying to themselves, I don't know if we're ever going to be back here. Like, this might be Jalen Brunson or Karl Anthony Towns or OG Anunoby or Mike Brown. It might be the best opportunity for these individuals, players, and coaches to get to the NBA Finals. What's kind of your take on this initial thought process?
I'm thinking Spurs in 6.
Spurs in 6.
I
want to go Spurs. I was
kind of leaning on Spurs in 5, but I'm not that confident in it. But I think Spurs in 6. Well, there's an article that came out this afternoon that the Spurs have an X factor that everyone's kind of forgetting about.
Sure.
When the Spurs won the Western Conference, Wemby and all those guys went and talked to one person when they got back. Pop.
Yep.
Popovich is still very active in that Spurs complex. He's there all the time. They're going to him for advice. You know, Riles isn't in New York giving free advice to the Knicks.
Sure.
He's in Miami doing stuff with the Heat. So I think that Popovich, in a way,
effect.
I think he's going to be almost an X factor because he's got all this experience, all this coaching knowledge, and he's there and he's available to the team for them to pick his head. Same with the coach too. The coach has any questions, he can go to Popovich.
I listened to Mitch Johnson today. That's the coach of the Spurs, basically saying like how Pop is impacting him, but also letting him be him. Like there's a piece of this where you can come to me at any time, but you got to also, make your own decisions and be your own person. Pretty interesting combination there. Okay, when we come back, we got Dillon Emery, who does pre and post for the San Antonio Spurs. He's going to join us, and we'll get his thoughts on the NBA Finals. We'll look at it from both sides. And then at 5:15, like I mentioned, Jeff Passan on the latest as far as the MLB labor union. Stay right here. This is the Schaefer and Sliwa Show. I'm Alan Sliwa on San Diego Sports 760. Also, just to make sure you can listen all the time live on the iHeartRadio app. So make sure you download that app.
The support is sponsored by the West Automotive Group. The Padres are in Philadelphia taking on the Phillies. As of right now, we are in the top of the 5th, and we are all tied at 2 apiece. In NFL news, we had a couple contract extensions today. The Falcons and wide receiver Drake London agreed to a 4-year, $141 million extension, and the Steelers and linebacker Nick Herbig agreed to a 4-year, $100 million extension. Tomorrow night, we got game 1 of the NBA Finals in San Antonio. They will tip that off after 5:30. At West Automotive Group, their philosophy is to never put money ahead of people, and their master certified technicians will only perform repairs you really need. Visit westautomotivegroup.com to book your appointment today. That's westautomotivegroup.com.
Our final hour for the day. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Schaefer and Sliwa Show. We are continuing to keep an eye on obviously the game going on right now. At the same time, we're getting ready. We're getting ready for just what's going to be a phenomenal series. Hopefully a good series between the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks. I want to welcome in, second time he's joined us on the show here, host of Spurs Countdown and Post Up, Dillon Emery. Dillon, what's going on, brother? Thank you for coming on again.
You know, it's the eve before the NBA Finals here in San Antonio, and I can tell you one thing. It is crazy in the city of San Antonio. I've never seen so many Jimmy Kimmel Live people being here today. It was a packed house, but San Antonio is ready for the NBA Finals.
Well, I'm going to take you back, if you don't mind. I thought the Western Conference Finals was obviously amazing. I thought it was just great basketball. You're watching two just incredibly young teams that probably are going to be in the mix here for a handful of years. So it's going to be exciting to watch it and see what that rivalry grows into. What'd you take away? You know, as they go 7 games, I could sit here and make some cases how the Thunder are going to be even more of a headache next year. I can make some cases of how the San Antonio Spurs, there's going to be some space between them and everybody else. Just what did you make of the Western Conference Finals before we start talking the NBA Finals?
You know, what I take away from that finals was how disappointing, and with all due respect, but how disappointing it was to see Chet Holmgren not show up in the Western Conference Finals Game 7. And I think a lot of guys in Oklahoma City, a lot of fans are going to take that away as well, because he just wasn't there for that Game 7. Now, looking at this game, it was going to be a great game from the start. We watched SGA just go off against the San Antonio Spurs. Sure. He had to carry that team. But I was honestly surprised, guys, that the team effort from the Thunder just wasn't there. And I don't know if you felt it, but this is what I felt. I just felt it. They just felt like they were going to get Game 7, and they didn't feel the pressure as much as San Antonio did. And San Antonio goes in there, punches them in the mouth again, and then they were able to survive in OKC and walk out with the Western Conference Finals championship.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, my biggest takeaway, SGA just didn't have help. You know, I think watching San Antonio, Wemby had, what'd you guys have? 7 guys scoring double figures, I want to say, in that Game 7. And the pressure, just every possession, the pressure wasn't on Wemby, where I felt like watching SGA, everything was on him. And yes, Case and Wallace gave you some buckets in the fourth quarter, but they didn't have the performance. The Chet thing is what I walked away most with as well, at least in Game 7. I mean, Chet Holmgren took 2 shots. I think he made the first bucket for the Oklahoma City Thunder and only took 1 more shot after that and didn't take a shot in the second half. So I think there's a piece of me that thinks that, you know, listen, and I'm going to not make too many excuses for the Oklahoma City Thunder, but I think obviously not having a healthy Jalen Williams all playoffs, of course, that's going to have an effect. But San Antonio rose to the occasion in Game 7. At least a lot of their role players did, and that was not the case for the Oklahoma City Thunder at all.
No, and I think for Oklahoma City, when we look at Game 6, when they tried to bring Jalen Williams back, it was too early. I think that, losing him in Game 7, again, not to make excuses for OKC, but I felt like that was a huge part. But then, you look at the way that they kind of finished off, the defending champions, the Spurs did. And let's be honest, that was a mediocre night for Wemby. That wasn't,
Sure, right.
I needed to go out there and get 40 minutes. This is what we've talked about all season in San Antonio. When you have your starting 5 getting double digits, you become a very dangerous team in the NBA because it's not one person. And that was a prime example to see the defending champion Oklahoma City Thunder have to have SGA go out there and score 30 plus and step up in the effort, because after the first quarter, SGA only had 6 points. But you have to say, and to be fair, it wasn't a roughing. There's no conspiracy theories out there, so everybody needs to quit doing that. But it was too little too late for OKC after the first quarter, and San Antonio hung on, and they figured them out. These two teams played 12 times this season. San Antonio goes 8-4 against the defending champions of the NBA, and that's why they're sitting here tomorrow waiting for tip-off in San Antonio for the NBA Finals.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating to the way you just put it right there. The 8-4, that says a lot, right? Like this wasn't, now granted, listen, these are the 7 games that matter the most. And we know how the series played out. How excited are you just for what you're about to see? I mean, how much from your perspective, it's different because your squad or your city, it's the San Antonio Spurs. But at the same token, I think for a lot of NBA fans out there, I know what I'm most excited about. I'm most excited about seeing Victor Wembanyama in an NBA Finals. And I think a lot of people are rooting for the 22-year-old, and he's such a unique player. And I could sit here and list all the reasons why I'm excited. But I'm also looking at the other side, and one of the more popular franchises in all of sports is the New York Knicks. And it's not because of winning. They're in the New York market. They got a huge fan base, and they haven't won a championship since the early 70s. You got the Madison Square Garden. You got that brand. Like, just how exciting is it if you try to take that Spurs hat off for a second and just kind of see what you're about to witness here over a potential 7-game set?
I mean, when I'm looking at it, you're right. I mean, the New York Knicks are the New York Knicks. It's not because they win multiple championships. It's because it's the New York Knicks, and for them to go a 27-year drought to be in the NBA Finals. And then guess what? Now they have to go back into the NBA Finals and face, the San Antonio Spurs again, So when you look at that, and it's small market versus big market, and when I try to take the silver and black off, you kind of look at this New York Knicks team. This isn't the 99 Knicks team that showed up in the NBA Finals that was an 8 seed against a very hot Spurs team. Because I kind of find it funny, and I don't know if you've known this or not, but the Spurs in 99 entered in the finals on a 10-game winning streak. Well, the Knicks are doing the same thing right now. So the roles are reversed here. And it'll be interesting to see another star matchup, because we just got done with SGA. Now we have to face Brunson. Now we have to face Cat, and everything else like that. It's another big man matchup. And let's be honest, Wemby had a break because of Chet Holmgren didn't really show up in the Western Conference Finals. You know that New York's coming, and it's a hot team. It's not one of those, okay, we made it through OKC, now it's just going to be an easy path. This is going to be a 6 to 7 game series, and it's going to be a great series to watch. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
What are your, and obviously just a reminder here, host of Spurs Countdown and Post Up, Dillon Emery, joining us here on San Diego Sports 760. What is, like, I'm looking at this series, and for me, I think there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, if it's whoever comes out of the West is going to win a championship. I think the way you talked about the Knicks, clearly there's a lot of respect towards the Eastern Conference, or at least their specific team. I got a tough time kind of gauging the Knicks, and frankly, I think the Spurs as well. And it's going to take a couple of games for us to really kind of know what the series is going to be about. But I look at New York and I say, all right, they've won 10 games in a row. They've been blowing out teams. They swept Philly. Right. They swept the Cleveland Cavaliers. They were down 2-1 against Atlanta and won the next 3. Or is that 11 in a row? I think they got 11 in a row. So with that in mind,
11 in a row.
Yeah, with that in mind, I pause and I'm like, yeah, but who did they really play in the Eastern Conference? it doesn't matter how you get there, but they're in the finals. How much of a threat do you think the Knicks are? I mean, how much is the conversation in San Antonio? Is there a little bit of, well, you beat the Thunder, you beat the defending champs, the path now should be easier, or is it not?
It's not easier, because when we look at New York and we actually have to count that Cup final game, they own the season series 2-1. And if you remember, the last time that the Spurs faced the Knicks, it was in Madison Square Garden at noon. And we, I'm going to say that we want to forget that game down here, because it was a 20-plus point blowout. And the Knicks just up and down the floor just outran us. They're a fast team. You know, you're going to see potential matchups where I don't know if De'Aaron Fox can go one-on-one with Brunson. I think that you're going to have to look at the rookie Dillon Harper to come in and try to provide that speed. We're going to see Carter Bryant, who, again, he's everybody's favorite child down here in San Antonio. I can tell you that much. But you're going to see this guy come in, and we're going to try to put speed on speed. And the Knicks are a team that we talk about down here. We all get together and we're like, this isn't just layover and we've got the finals. You know, you have to take the Knicks seriously, because if you don't and you come out tomorrow night, you're facing an 0-1 deficit and you just lost home court advantage again. And it will be tough up in Madison Square Garden, because if you remember those fans, they were chanting, "We want Wemby," after their 20-plus point comeback against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So the New York Knicks are hungry, and we have to be on all 4 toes or 5 toes or however you want to put it, and be ready for these New York Knicks, because that is the one team in the East that I have kept my eye on. Because Boston, I give them credit for what they did, but we saw what happened in the playoffs. It was too much for Tatum. He wasn't just quite there yet. And then you can say that the Knicks didn't play anybody, because honestly they didn't, because for them to have a 10-game winning streak like that. But let's be honest too, Cleveland had a 20-point lead on them in Madison Square Garden.
Sure.
And the Knicks were able to come back from that in the fourth quarter alone. And that tells you a lot about this team, and they're not going to quit. An advantage to the Knicks because of Jeremy Sohan. I know he hasn't seen 1 minute of play in this NBA playoffs, but he knows this Spurs system well. And Mike Brown has been talking to him, and he knows how to get these Knicks ready to face his former team that he was drafted by in the top 10 just a couple years ago.
Host of the Spurs Countdown and Post Up, Dillon Emery, joining us here on San Diego Sports 760. Dillon, what should we be expecting from Victor Wembanyama? I mean, I know he's going to be the talk and he's the conversation for everybody, but I think let's just kind of we'll key in on just him specifically. What should we be expecting from Victor Wembanyama in his first finals appearance?
I would think that you would see a complete dominance from him. A lot of people are giving him some grief a little bit about his emotion after beating OKC in 7 games. That's from the FIBA days, from Chet Holmgren and everything else like that. But when listening to him at the podium, one of the key things that he said was, "I can't wait to talk to Pop." Not that he doesn't have respect for Mitch Johnson, but I can tell you this, guys. Pop was at the airport the next morning, and he was one of the first cars out of there. But you saw from a distance that Pop was sitting there talking to Wemby one-on-one. Wemby knows that this city wants a championship. And when you heard Wemby say, "I'm getting addicted to this," that's pretty scary. What do I expect from him? This is his finals MVP to win. And it'll be nice to see the number 1 draft pick for the first time since 2005, which was Tim Duncan, to win a finals MVP and an NBA championship here for the city of San Antonio.
Dillon, final one I got for you, brother, and appreciate the time and your insight. Most important player for the San Antonio Spurs outside of Wemby?
Ooh, that's a good question. I was actually
because you guys have a lot of options. I mean, that's the amazing thing. I think that's what I think makes San Antonio most interesting.
Yeah, and if I get a free pass here to give 2 players there, I'm going to say number 1 is going to be Steph Castle. He's got to control his emotions out there. He's one of our starters. But also look out for Luke Cornett to have an awesome series against the New York Knicks, because when you look at his days with Boston, he knows the New York system. He knows what they have. And I also see him to bounce back here and be that bench player that we need to come off the bench to give Wemby that rest, because Wemby did go into the 35-plus minutes here in the Western Conference Finals. But give me Luke Cornett to be that standout player here in the NBA Finals.
All right, I'm going to focus on your backcourt. I think De'Aaron Fox, with his experience, has got to be key for the San Antonio Spurs. But I keep saying that, and I don't think it's been working so far. But he was solid in Game 7.
Yes.
Go ahead, Dillon.
One more thing, though. Can we be honest here? The real loser out of the NBA Finals, can we say it? Because I know you guys are out in California. I'm going to say it, is the Sacramento Kings. How about this? They fire Mike Brown. He's now in the NBA Finals.
Jeez.
We get De'Aaron Fox out of the deal. He's in the NBA Finals.
Unbelievable.
Sacramento, what are you doing?
Well,
what are you doing?
Yeah, Dillon, you could have that. You could say that any year with any player that's gone through that Sacramento Kings system. I appreciate the time. Good luck this upcoming finals, and really appreciate the preview.
Yes, sir. Anytime, guys. Appreciate you.
All right, that's Dillon Emery right there. Okay, great stuff from him. All right, we got to go to commercial break here. I kind of went a little long here. Great stuff there. We come back. Got that Jeff Passan sound that I want to play. Stay right here. You're listening to San Diego Sports 760 live on the iHeartRadio app. All right, San Diego Sports 760, your home for live coverage of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Get daily match updates from the opening match June 11th to the final July 1st. Hear live play-by-play of the most anticipated games and every USA match, the excitement of the World Cup in one place. San Diego Sports 760. Brandon, you big soccer fan at all? No, nothing. Man, I didn't even finish my question. Your head was already churning. It was very aggressively churning. Like I didn't even get an opportunity to let me finish my sentence. It's funny with the World Cup, and I'm looking forward to it. It is one of those tournaments where when it's going on, I'm in. I just always kind of find it funny, and this is going to happen again, and this happens every single year. All of a sudden, I'm going to get some texts from some friends and cousins, and they're going to be like, "Can you believe this?" And USA that, and USA that, and I'm like, "Listen, you don't even know." 80% of what you're talking about doesn't make any sense. And can we stop pretending like we're keeping up with USA World Cup soccer for all 4 years? Like it's not happening. And I wish it was more of the case. I mean, I think the World Cup is so much fun and obviously getting to that tournament, it's kind of crazy. Going back to last World Cup, why I was so invested into Argentina and France. I mean, you would have thought I grew up in Buenos Aires and that's it. Well, my entire family is there, but obviously, World Cup going to be starting here pretty soon. You get a break from San Diego FC is going to be on a break along with the rest of the MLS. I talked a little bit about the NWSL and the San Diego Wave. They're going to be on a break as well. San Diego Wave right now in the NWSL, the most points of any other city out there, any other team. So shout out to them for what they've been able to do. Obviously, very, very important to see what they've been doing. And any success in San Diego will take it. NWSL, in the NWSL, San Diego Wave, representing SD very, very well right now. Okay, so a little bit earlier, by the way, just a quick update here. A 2-2 right now in Philadelphia. A 2-run homer for Gavin Sheets, a 2-run homer for Bryce Harper. Randy Vasquez has gone 5, I want to say, and as has Nola. So just something to keep in mind. And we'll keep you posted as things happen here. A little bit earlier today, Jeff Passan was on with Pat McAfee. He was on the Pat McAfee show. By the way, that man is pulling guest after guest. I mean, every time I look on there, we're talking commissioners and this. I mean, I think it was last week. It's Adam Silver and it's this. And obviously major topics are coming out of it. One of the main storylines, which I'm not sure if this is odd, that this is one of the main storylines in the first week of June. But it seems kind of odd that already all the attention has gone towards these negotiations. And everybody's trying to play the public relations game, and the Players Association is going to say, how dare you mention salary cap? And the owners are going to say, we're going to try to, obviously do what all these other sports are doing. Here's why I'm getting a little bit optimistic about my own personal view on where we're sitting at in regards to these labor negotiations, which there's obviously a long way to go and about 5 months before this thing expires. And we'll see how it affects the 2027 season. My view is very simple. And I every time I have the conversation with John Schaefer, I'm looking for one thing. I want one thing. I want to be able, before a season starts, I just want to look out and say, hey, is there an equal playing field? Like, are we walking out here? And does every franchise have a legitimate chance of competing? And you know what? Reward the franchises that are ran well, and franchises that aren't ran well. We just had, somebody in there taking a shot at the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings is a perfect example of a really poor run organization. We got that in baseball. We got that in the NFL. It happens. But what I don't want to see is, well, I just got more money than you. Or what I don't want to see, and we've obviously seen this in the Dodger case, not only are they ran very, very well, they are, give them credit there, give credit where credit's due, but they also got a lot more money than everybody else, or at least, 95% of the other teams out there. Now, you could also have all the money in the world in the New York Mets and still have your organization ran poorly. I just want to see, and I've had this take before, I just want to see an equal playing field. Let me play this here real quick. This is Jeff Passan on with Pat McAfee. And listen to it, because I think there's something he says that's so important at the end is why I'm getting more encouraged about the situation.
This is going to be a story that continues and hopefully, as you said, continues on a positive trajectory. But the reality is Major League Baseball and the MLBPA right now could not be farther apart. And it's not just in terms of money that they couldn't be farther apart. It's the philosophy. It's the fact that Major League Baseball wants to completely upend and change the system that has governed the sport since the first collective bargaining agreement between the sides. And the players want to look at it right now and say status quo is working for the game. The game is in a great place. Why would we change things up right now? So it's almost like they're speaking different languages at this point. And here's the thing, the language of MLB at this point, which is put a salary cap in place, is very appealing to a majority of fans out there. And that's what the Players Association is fighting against. It's against the narrative that salary caps are necessary to have competitive balance in baseball.
All right, that to me is the most important part of what Jeff Passan said. We're going to go to commercial break. I want to talk about this when we come back. When he said, this is what the Players Union is fighting against. They're fighting against the narrative that the fans no longer believe the game of baseball is on an equal playing field. Let's talk about that when we come back. This is San Diego Sports 760. You're also listening live on the iHeartRadio app. Stay right here. Schaefer and Sliwa, Mal and Sliwa on San Diego Sports 760.
This report is sponsored by Taco Bell. Padres are in Philadelphia right now taking on the Phillies. We are in the bottom of the 6th inning, and we are all tied up at 2. Phillies got runners on the corners. In NFL news, we had a couple contract extensions today. The Falcons and wide receiver Drake London agreed to a 4-year, $140 million extension. And the Steelers and linebacker Nick Herbig agreed to a 4-year, $100 million extension. Tomorrow, we got game 1 of the NBA Finals in San Antonio. They're going to tip off a little bit after 5:30 tomorrow night. Taco Bell's new jalapeno citrus salsa. Bright, spicy, zesty, impossible to ignore. It brings main character energy to every bite. It's not just a sauce, it's a star. Only at participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only while supplies last.
I appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Schaefer and Sleewa Show, you could tune in, of course, Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. We're always live on the iHeartRadio app. Appreciate everybody here on YouTube. John Schaefer out for the week, so I will be doing the show solo, and he'll come back next week. And if they keep losing games, I'm going to have to get his ass back here a little bit earlier. I was talking about, or we just played a clip here of Jeff Passan. I'm not going to replay it, but I'm going to give everyone just a quick idea of what he said. Jeff Passan was on with Pat McAfee, and there was a piece of what Jeff Passan said towards the end of that conversation where he just specified that right now the players union they got a battle on their hands, and the battle that they have is not just the owners. But the battle they also have on their hand is public relations. There's a PR battle that the players are trying to fight on top of making sure that there isn't a salary cap and everything else. I'm going to take my opinion out of this. I'm just going to kind of try to give you a little bit of the perception over this last week that we've been talking about this. We had Jesse Rogers on last week, which I'll go back to. I thought he said, honestly, some of the most common sense things that I've heard in this whole argument about where baseball should be going. And I don't hear that enough. And frankly, one of the people that I've been critical about in the past is Jeff Passan. This is the first time I've ever heard, and maybe he said it before, but I just haven't paid that much attention to it, or I'm not watching all these clips. Brett, it's one of the first times that I've heard Jeff Passan kind of throw a little bit of like, yeah, here's the perception. People don't think the sport right now is in a good position, and they don't feel like their cities and their teams have an equal chance to compete against some of these other markets. Maybe I'm just talking about the Dodgers. Maybe that's honestly the only team that I should be talking about. And for the first time, I felt like there was kind of a crack in the armor there where he said, right now, fan bases don't like the current system and they want to see they want to see change to it. And listen, I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that the owners, all they care about is winning and they just want equal competition. Of course, the owners want a salary cap. I'm sure part of the reason is they feel like there'll be equal competition. The other part of the reason is they're probably it's just going to be more profitable for their own business. So I'm not trying to make it sound like these guys are saints or anything. But I'm telling you, listening to that Passan towards the end of him saying, like, this is the biggest thing they're going to be battling against is the fan perception. That's kind of the first time where I'm like, hey, maybe you are actually going to get changes that the players union, as strong as they've been in the past, there might be some cracks this time around.
I kind of feel like Passan's talking out of both sides of his mouth, though, because...
But I feel like he's typically on the player side. I don't feel like he's typically anywhere leans towards the owner side.
He's typically on the Dodgers side.
I believe, and that's a reason why there's a lot of times where I'm like, why is this guy protecting everything that's based off of that?
That's why I said it feels like he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, just for the fact that, he's sitting there now talking about, we really need this for competitive balance. But yet last year you were telling us how the Dodgers deferring all that money was great for baseball. And
can I say this? The only thing, Brent, I don't think that's his opinion, what he said today. I think he's laying out, this is the perception right now around baseball. The perception is, yeah, this ain't a fair fight. And I think if you asked his opinion, I think his opinion would say no salary cap. And by the way, he's probably not the only one that says no salary cap, but I think his opinion would be different than I think the message he was trying to convey.
Yeah, it's just, he always has defended, the Dodgers deferring the money and everything else,
the spending,
and that wasn't popular with outside of Dodger fans either. But he didn't. He never brought that up.
I agree with you.
It's good for baseball, and oh God, the Dodgers, if they would get Tarik Skubal, that would be great. For him, the Dodgers could have they practically do now, but they could have a literal team 1 to 9, including the pitching staff of all stars, and he would think it's the best thing that ever happened to baseball because he's kind of a Dodger honk.
What's crazy is Jesse Rogers, who we had on last week. Think about how polar opposite. Both of them obviously work for the same company. Both do a phenomenal job. I'm not trying to, push one on the other or anything like that. But Jesse Rogers was on last week and basically said something to the effect that he thinks for the state of baseball, there has to be a salary cap. And how are you supposed to compete? He even said, now I don't really disagree with him on this, but he said something to the effect of, I guarantee you, Andrew Friedman would be somebody that would want to prove that even with a salary cap that the Dodgers can win a World Series. Maybe Andrew Friedman deep down in his heart knows he's already got 2 World Series, knows he's already a made man, knows what he was building in Tampa, and then what he's doing obviously with the Dodgers. But maybe he could feel that way. I don't think ownership cares. I don't think their fan base cares. And listen, they're playing by the rules. No one's saying that they're not playing by the rules. They've almost, to be honest with you, kind of, if you're playing a game of chess, it's kind of like, checkmate with what they've done with baseball. But the two are so polar opposite of their opinions and their thoughts on where baseball is. It's almost like one is talking for the fans and the other one is talking for maybe these bigger markets and these bigger franchises.
To a certain extent, I
sound like a baby, by the way. Every time I freaking talk about a salary cap, I know that, in one sense, of course, I'm looking at it from a Padre perspective, but I do think for the health of the league, it is something that's critical. So,
to a certain degree, I agree with what Jesse Rogers said about, the Dodgers GM might welcome it, just because everyone outside of the Dodgers goes, oh, you won because you spent all that money. You did this and this and this. I could see him from
they got 10 different ways to win.
Yeah, but that's coming from like a pro Dodger perspective. Everyone that hates the Dodgers is 100%. They bought it. They bought everything.
Absolutely.
Technically, they didn't even buy it because they deferred it. So they put it on their credit card and they're going to pay for it later. So I think to a certain degree, I think the Dodgers GM might welcome it just so then he could show, look, you think I'm apparently bad at my job and I can only win because I have an unlimited checkbook. Well, watch this. You're going to change the rules and I'm going to adjust to the new rules and we're going to still win anyways. And then I want to see what you say.
By the way, love to see it. I'd love to see it. And I've kind of tried making this point a ton. To me, there's a way to look at certain franchises. Franchises are going to be good no matter what predicament or situation that they're in, period. The Los Angeles Rams are going to be good because they're ran well. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to be good because they're ran well. The Atlanta Braves, for the most part, are ran well. Like the Dodgers would still be good even if there is a salary cap. But I go back to what I just said. It's one of the first times where I kind of pause and I stop for a second. I'm like, wait a minute here. Maybe there is a world that exists that there will be significant changes. And I think I got more excited because it came from Jeff Passan and it didn't come from Jesse Rogers. Because Jesse Rogers, I kind of know what to expect. There's certain people I know what to expect when they're reporting on something or they're giving their opinion. The Passan one threw me off. The Passan one was like, okay, wow, that means there's enough fans out there saying, yeah, kind of enough of this, right? That means there's definitely enough from that perspective. Okay, one thing that I will kind of give everyone a little bit update on, there was a lot of conversation coming into this series. And if you didn't listen to the beginning of the show, Ramon Laureano on the 10-day IL, he's got a hip that's bothering him. This started back in 2021, apparently. That's what Craig Stammen was saying, affecting him more lately, needed a breather, a couple of different things that you can hit on there. Yesterday we had Kevin Acee on, Jace Bowen was being brought up for the San Diego Padres and was getting an opportunity against the Phillies tonight. He's got his first single. Kind of a cool story right there. Anytime that you see that, you see people's family and everything else kind of reacting to that. So, it's interesting. You got expectations for this guy, and the difference between him and some of these other players, the guy can hit. And what I'm referring to when I say he can hit, he can actually hit for power, which nobody right now from the San Diego Padres has the ability to do that, it seems like. But there's also these expectations of, I hope nobody gives any expectations on him. Anything he gives to the San Diego Padres should just be gravy. And no one should be looking at him and saying to themselves, oh, well, you got this youngster coming in, a 25-year-old, he can hit for power. He's going to be one of those. No, the Padres are going to continue to win games. Yes, can they get some moments from Castellanos or Ty France? Gavin Sheets has just become a legit player. There's nothing really else that you could say about that. But there should be no expectations for what he does, but it's kind of cool for him. Anytime you get your first single in the major leagues, pretty cool moment.
I don't think people should have too high expectations for him anyways, because essentially now it's looking like he's there to replace, Laureano because he got put on the IL. But originally he's just there to replace Bryce Johnson.
1,000%.
And, Kevin brought it up yesterday. He essentially is Bryce Johnson with more pop in his bat.
More power, kind of has the ability to, he's not going to be as good as a defender in center as Bryce Johnson is, but he's obviously going to play different parts of the outfield as well. All right. Final segment when we come back. Couple things I want to do before we get out of here. There was some conversation from Ken Rosenthal. And I just kind of want to bring this up. And we talked about what a critical month this is going to be for the San Diego Padres in June. And we know obviously some of the bats that are struggling. We'll talk a little bit about what this team could look like if all of a sudden their bats did wake up, and continue to kind of preview. I got some stats here. They're talking about the Western Conference Finals, the numbers it did, and all the attention moving to the NBA Finals. We'll do that as well coming up next. You are listening to the Schaefer and Sliwa Show on San Diego Sports 760 live on the iHeartRadio app. All right, San Diego Sports 760. Brent, you got me frustrated here. Got me frustrated. We're talking about, during the break, we're talking about some of their contracts. You know, as we look at what happens in Major League Baseball, and you start looking, you know, obviously these contracts that go out for so long. And you had said something that was interesting. You're like, listen, some of these contracts that they signed, look, the position that they're in, I mean, there are definitely contracts that they have. It's on them. I mean, nobody's sitting here trying to tell you that that's another team's fault, or maybe you're doing everything you can to try to compete. And the only way that you can get Xander is by overpaying by X amount of dollars, which, by the way, then just don't overpay. Like it's just too much of an overpay. If it's, you know, 30, 40 million, if it's 5 million a year extra, okay, you can manage that. That's not going to kill you there. But you were just saying, you know, some of the terms of the contract, some of the players, like I'm not here to argue that. I mean, obviously a lot of that sits on the backs of your front office. And at that time, Peter Seidler, which I get what he was trying to do. Seidler was trying to cash one in. That's what he was trying to do.
I just don't like, in a sport where 100% of the money is guaranteed.
Yeah.
I don't like
it's
just
risky.
Doling out 10 to 14-year deals, you know, and like I joked during the commercial break, you know, it's not against the law to sign a player to a 4 or 5 year deal and then just put like a player team option on there. So
I can see that more too.
You know, so then if we have a situation like Tatis that happens to where, you know, 3-4 years into his deal, all of a sudden he's not hitting home runs and he's not, you know, he's still a good player and everything, but he's not, you know, like we always joke, we're not paying him all that money to hit singles. They're paying him to hit the ball over the fence.
You know, it's funny. It's not the NBA, but I give some NBA comps. I'll give you some. I think there's, you know, certain contracts right now in the NBA you look at and you're like, oh my gosh, that player's making how much money at Holmgren just based off of what he just did. He's like a 240 or something like that. I mean, it's going to be some crazy money. Now, I still think Chet's a good player. We'll see what happens. But you're right. There's a lot of contracts that they'll have a team option on there 3 years in, 4 years in, whatever the case is. But you also can't go over 5 years. It's the longest contract you can give in basketball. A 5-year contract is the longest. And that's, you know, I'll give you one good example right now. Austin Reeves, who's obviously a guard for the Lakers, and really cool story. Undrafted, kind of came up and made his name with the Lakers. Austin Reeves could potentially make this summer, I don't think it's going to happen, but he's got the potential to make 5 years, $241 million. That's the potential that Austin Reeves has. Okay, let's just say that you paid him for 5 years, 241, and it was a colossal failure. At least it's just 5 years. I mean, 5 years is a long time. Don't get me wrong, but it's not 8 or 9 or 10 or a 12-year deal or something along those lines. So that obviously makes things interesting from that front. Speaking of the NBA, you can tell me if you're surprised about this one. And I read some of this, but we just got the latest one here. Spurs versus the Thunder Western Conference Finals was the most watched Western Conference Finals, was the most watched conference finals in 24 years. And Game 7 peaked with 17.7 million viewers. Wow. You think the finals does more than that?
Yes, because the New York market.
That's so impressive to me that OKC and San Antonio, and you got that. That tells you two things. I mean, let's say it was Oklahoma City and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Is that number half?
Yeah.
Just because Wemby's not there?
Yeah, because Wemby's not there. And I think we have to factor in, too, that, you know, either you're with OKC or you despise OKC. So there's probably a good
that helped
watching
element
to it because there's a villain, you know, so to say in the game. So, but I think the finals will top it just because you got that New York market.
I know we'll top it. I guess the question is just how much more it will. I mean, maybe some of this also too. Game 1 kind of set this table. It set the stage. Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, it goes to double overtime. Wemby hits a freaking 30-footer that will always be remembered. That kind of set the table of like, hey, welcome to the Western Conference Finals. This is what this matchup is going to be. The only thing I will say, you said that maybe some of these ratings went up as well because of the hate watching. I mean, were the Thunder that hateable?
Not as a team, but SGA, I think
I cannot
driving.
I can't believe how much air and energy that thing took, because it took off. And you obviously watch, and the closer that you watched, as the series went on, and the more you paid attention to it, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I'm trying to think, for a player that quiet, for a player that, I don't think many people, it's not like he's out there and he's got all these sound bites where he's calling out other people. Like, he doesn't give you that much to hate on, but I think people really didn't respect his style of play. But I've seen players that are not the most respected stylistically still don't get as much hate as he got. I mean, there's a lot of energy that went towards that.
Well, it's not that people are souring on him because of, he runs his mouth, like I'm trying to think of Dillon Brooks or somebody like
Definitely
that.
not because of that, or Draymond Green or something like that.
It's nothing like that, because, I think that's part of the reason why he isn't going to be the face of the NBA is because he's too quiet.
He's very quiet.
He's very Mike Troutish, to where he's just going to go out there and play, and then that's it. He doesn't want all these endorsements and other stuff like that.
And make the playoffs and win something if you're Mike Trout.
The thing with me and, your predecessor hated SGA, and me and John would defend him. But this year, he just got on my nerves. It was just, I have no problem if you're going to drive to the basket to draw fouls. That's part of the game. I'm not going to criticize. I don't care if you shoot 30 free throws because you drove to the basket and you drew contact.
You're trying to fool everybody.
The thing this year that drove me nuts was the falling down on jump shots. That drove me nuts. Just every single jumper, it's just I have to fall down. Even if nobody touches me, I have to fall down. And the Thunder's a good enough team that
I know.
You don't need to do that.
That's the problem. The problem is they almost like took away their own respect. A lot of people respected them for. And listen, I think there was a good amount of fans last season that wanted to see them lose against Indiana. They go Game 7. Tyrese Halliburton gets injured.
I hate Halliburton too.
But I think that he kind of became a fan favorite. But I think you're right. I think there's something about with the Oklahoma City Thunder. You want to be if you're going to win in a respectable way. And that what they started facing is all of a sudden they just became, it was unnatural. What they were doing that got them to an NBA championship, you're right, they're just kind of falling down and nobody touches you. That is a BS style of basketball to be playing. All right, we're coming to the close of this show. Tomorrow, I did mention Darren Smith's going to join us. So looking forward to having Darren on the show. Just a quick heads up here before we get out of here. It's a 3-2 game right now. Philadelphia up on the San Diego Padres. Jeremiah Estrada charged with that third run. Padres did have a 2-0 lead and are now down 3-2. Tomorrow, we will break everything down. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Shout out to Brent for handling everything in the background. You are listening to San Diego Sports 760 live on the iHeartRadio app.